Chapter 1346. Hu Xiaoye and the others had also improved rapidly. They had all reached the Nirvana realm. When they heard the system notification, they immediately cheered. Our hubby is so powerful. He actually wiped out a shifter tribe on his own. I love him to death. There were also some female players who were dejected. I thought that our hard work had already closed the gap between us and our hubby. I didn't expect the gap to widen. I'm really afraid that one day we'll only be able to look at our hubbies back from afar. Yeah, our realms are too low. We can't follow behind our hubby. I'm so angry. Yichun didn't care about these players' discussions. Compared to the potential points and the rewards of the supreme grade immortal stones, he was the happiest about the shifter tribe's nemesis title. It was too useful for him at this stage. Now that all his enemies were shifter tribe, activating the title would give him a 10% boost to his combat power. It was like having another divine weapon. Yichun had gained a lot from this battle. He flew around the golden-toothed boar tribe and collected all the scattered equipment. Of course, he couldn't be bothered to look at the equipment that was below the spiritual tool rank. He might be able to use the equipment that was above the spiritual tool rank. This time, wiping out the golden-toothed boar tribe was just a casual action. The main reason was that Yichun hated them for destroying so many immortal transformation fruits. After killing Wu Shuang, he decided to come here as well. However, before Zhu Gingran died, he said that the Black Tiger tribe was a very powerful tribe. It shouldn't be too far away from here. A cold light flashed in Yichun's eyes. Perhaps his next step was to pay this so-called Black Tiger tribe a visit. Yichun's powerful divine sense enveloped his surroundings. He carefully scanned the surrounding valleys and mountain ranges. As he expected, there wasn't a single immortal transformation fruit left in a radius of hundreds of thousands of kilometers. They had all been destroyed by the shifter tribe. Yichun decided to rest for a while at the ruins of the golden-toothed boar tribe. With his current cultivation, he wouldn't be tired even if he fought for 7 days and 7 nights. However, he couldn't help but feel a little tired. Yichun casually hunted 2 wild rabbits in the forest and roasted them. However, at this moment, in a place tens of millions of kilometers away from Yichun, in a tribe that was 100 times larger than the golden-toothed boar tribe, some shifter tribe with high cultivation were constantly patrolling. This was the Black Tiger tribe, the golden-toothed boar tribe's tribe. Even the patrolling minions of the Black Tiger tribe were all lesser demon beasts. Those higher-level leaders were all at the demon immortal level. It could be said that the strength of the Black Tiger tribe was worlds apart from the golden-toothed boar tribe. There were as many as 108 demon immortals like Zhu Gangran in the Black Tiger tribe. At this moment, in the shadow behind the Black Tiger tribe, there were 2 small beasts guarding a huge cave. They were drowsy. Suddenly, 4 jade tablets on a stone table in the cave suddenly shattered. The 2 little demons were shocked, and their sleepiness disappeared. They quickly got up and looked around nervously. When they saw the 4 broken pieces of jade on an inconspicuous table, they breathed a sigh of relief. One of the small demons patted his chest and said, "That scared me to death. I thought some big shot had fallen. Turns out it was just a few boar demons from the golden-toothed boar tribe." The other little demon looked around vigilantly, then gave him a reproachful glare and said carefully, "What are you talking about? Those who can place their command medallions here are all demon deities. They're not people we can talk about, even if he is a demon boar. Don't waste any more time. Hurry up and report this to those big shots." The 2 little demons hurriedly walked to the golden tent in the middle and knelt on the ground. They said in a trembling voice, "Your Majesty, just a while ago, in the Life Origin cave behind us, the Life Origin tablets of the 4 lords of the golden-toothed boar tribe have shattered at the same time. I'm afraid something bad has happened." At this moment, in the golden tent, there was a burly man sitting behind the table in the middle. He was more than 6 meters tall and had a fierce aura around him, as if he was a ferocious tiger from ancient times. On either side of it sat 36 demon immortals of the Black Tiger demon clan. The Black Tiger tribe had a total of 108 Yao celestial level experts. Among them, only 72 had been overseeing the tribe. The rest had already been distributed to various places to patrol. The Black Tiger Demon King's strength was even more unfathomable. After hearing what was said, he didn't have any expression on his face. He coldly said, "This command plate has shattered, which means that these 4 idiots are already dead. No matter how useless these 4 idiots are, they're still my Black Tiger Tribe's vassals. Before beating a dog, you have to look at its master. I want to see who crossed the line and try to take advantage of my Black Tiger Tribe." As soon as he finished speaking, 5 Black Tiger demons stood up and said, "Your Majesty, there is no time to lose. Let's go and see who is so bold." The Black Tiger Demon King nodded. Immediately, the 5 subordinates curled up a gust of wind and rushed towards the Golden Tooth Boar tribe as fast as lightning. Although the Black Tiger demons of the Black Tiger tribe were also demon deities, they were much stronger than the Demon Boar tribe's Boar tribe. The demon chi around them was thicker, and their aura was more terrifying. It seemed that these demon clans were the true fighting race. In less than the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the 5 Black Tiger tribes' gunpowder arrived in the air above the Golden-Toothed Boar tribe that had already turned into ruins. They frowned when they saw the complete destruction of the Golden-Toothed Boar tribe. It seemed that their king's guess was right. Someone had crossed the line and completely destroyed the Golden-Toothed Boar tribe. But what kind of demon had done it? Could it be the White-Eyed Lion tribe that was the enemy of the Black Tiger tribe? Suddenly, the few of them noticed something unusual at the same time. Beside the ruins of the Golden-Toothed Boar tribe, there was a young man in green robes. He sat there calmly and roasted 2 wild rabbits as if there was no one around. They didn't know what kind of seasoning was sprinkled on them, but a tempting aroma drifted into the noses of the Black Tiger demons. Immediately, the Black Tiger demons became alert. Such a peaceful scene was really out of place when compared to the hell-like ruins of the Golden-Toothed Boar tribe. The 5 Black Tiger demons surrounded Yi Chun cautiously. One of the Black Tiger demons asked, "What are you doing? Why are you here?" Chapter 1347. In their eyes, the human before them was just an ordinary human. Even a hairy black tiger from their tribe will be able to beat him to the ground. However, the surrounding corpses constantly reminded them of this fact. Yichen smiled as he looked at the young tiger demons before him. He continued to focus on roasting the rabbit before him. A bit of cumin appeared in his hand, and he gently sprinkled it over the rabbit. A series of crackling sounds rang out, and the aroma immediately rose to another level. Even the young tiger demons beside him swallowed their saliva. It was simply too fragrant. "Damn it, human. I'm asking you a question. How dare you ignore me?" One of the tiger demons held a spike club in his hand and pointed it at Yi Chun in an imposing manner. He was clearly the leader of these tiger demons. The breeze whistled. At that moment, Yi Chun really wanted to sing a song to express his mastery of roasting rabbit. As for the tiger demons beside him, he did not even want to watch. "Human, you dare to look down on me? I'll let you have a taste of my power." The leading black tiger was thoroughly enraged by this human's actions. He roared and swung his spike club at Yi Chun. "Black Tiger Tribe, I've been waiting for you for a long time." Yi Chun turned his head slightly to look at the attacking black tiger. He casually placed the rabbit into his mouth and tore it apart. Then, he pointed out with his finger. The black tiger immediately stopped attacking and looked at Yi Chun in shock. He felt that he could not move his body at all. Apart from moving his eyes, he could not even swallow his saliva to suppress his shock. The remaining black tigers were shocked. They wanted to charge forward and attack, but when they moved, they realized that they could not move either. They could only watch helplessly. "Go find your leader. Tell him that I've come to visit him personally." Yi Chun waved his hand and said coldly. The black tigers immediately widened their eyes and fell to the ground dead. The smell of urine wafted out from the last remaining black tiger. The black tiger trembled as he looked at the human before him in horror. He knew how powerful a commander was. He was at least at the level of a small demon. However, this human before him had only waved his hand, and his companions had died without even making a sound. Yi Chun frowned slightly. He hadn't expected the sudden appearance of this bird. He felt a little nauseous and lost his appetite. He could only throw away the rabbit in his hand. "You're really lucky to have disturbed my mood. Lead the way," Yichen said coldly. With a wave of his hand, a large hand lifted the black tiger up and covered it with a spiritual energy shield. He really couldn't stand the smell of the tiger yowl. It was simply too pungent. "Yes, yes, my lord," Black Tiger replied with a trembling voice. He forcefully suppressed the fear in his heart and pointed in a direction deep in the mountains. This Black Tiger tribe is quite well hidden. Yichen looked in the direction that Black Tiger was pointing. It was deep within the grand wilderness. The deeper they went, the stronger the demons were. There was no lack of powerful demon kings among them. "Rise!" Yichen shouted softly. He immediately turned into a ray of light and flew into the sky. He advanced in that direction. The mountain range under his feet quickly fell behind. Soon, he saw a demon tribe. They were all demons of the same species as Black Tiger. My lord, it's here." The Black Tiger trembled in fear. He looked at Yichen pleadingly, begging not to kill him. Yichen looked at the tribe in front of him and nodded. This was a huge mountain. It wasn't any smaller than the territories of the previous demon tribes. However, the Black Tiger tribe had developed the entire mountain. It was obvious that the leader of the Black Tiger tribe wasn't weak. Yichen did not kill Black Tiger. Instead, he waved his hand and aimed at a well-built cave abode. Black Tiger immediately felt dizzy. His entire body moved at an extremely fast speed and smashed into the cave abode. Black Tiger fell to the ground, not knowing whether he was dead or alive. The Black Tigers, who were busy, all looked on in shock. Then, they saw Yichen, who was floating in the air. At the same time, the 36 demon gods rushed out and stared at the human in front of them. They emitted demon chi and stared at him. "Who is it?" An angry roar came from the smoky cave. Then a huge amount of demon chi filled the air. The cave exploded again, and a gray-faced demon god flew out. He stared at Yichen. "You're the human who killed those 4 idiots?" A big man appeared not far away from Yichen. He stared coldly at Yichen. "I killed them." "What? You're not convinced?" Yichen looked at the big man indifferently and said softly. His voice was filled with disdain. According to human standards, this demon king was a sky immortal. However, he was still considered one of the stronger demons. The big man frowned. The human in front of him looked very young. However, the faint aura coming from him was very powerful. It was oppressive and made him uncomfortable. Among all the human experts he had met, this human was stronger than any of them. "Sir, I wonder why you want me to kill the demons under my command. I hope you can give me an explanation." The big man said coldly. He didn't want to attack. If he could avoid attacking, he couldn't because he couldn't defeat this human. "Them? I killed them." "What? You're not convinced?" Yichen said with a smile. He didn't reveal his strength. Other than this Black Tiger leader, the other demons couldn't see anything. "You?" The big man's chest rose and fell rapidly. He resisted the urge to attack. He stared coldly at Yichen and said, "I admit that you're very strong. However, don't forget that this is my headquarters. If you leave now, I'll treat it as if there's nothing between us." Yichen felt that he was here to pick a fight. How did it turn into a negotiation? "Leader, why are you talking so much nonsense with him? Just kill him and avenge our brothers." The demon god who had his cave destroyed said viciously, "Who do you think you are? Let me ask you, did your tribe destroy that fruit?" Yichen asked coldly. His aura slowly spread out. The remaining 35 demon gods looked at the demon god mockingly. The demon god who was mocked felt embarrassed. He circulated his spiritual energy and was about to attack Yichen. "Shut up and get back to where you came from." The big man roared at the demon god. The demon god was stunned. "Leader," the demon god's expression changed. He wanted to say something, but stopped. He could only stand back and stare at Yichen. He wanted to tear him apart. The big man thought for a moment. Other than eating meat and playing with women, there was only one other type of demon god. He quickly asked, "Sir, are you talking about the stinky fruit?" "That's right. Tell me, don't you deserve to die?" Yichen nodded. His hand flashed, and the reincarnation sword appeared. He pointed it at the big man. The big man's expression changed slightly. He secretly prepared himself to attack. He couldn't understand how a human could have such a strong taste for such a stinky fruit. Die, Yi-Chen said. The aura of a golden immortal immediately spread out. Then, his figure flashed and disappeared. Be careful. The big man's eyes flashed, and he quickly shouted. Chapter 1348. The burly man warned Yi-Chen, but it was too late. With a flash of sword light, Yi-Chen returned to his original position and quietly looked at the burly man. The 37 demon experts in the sky looked at each other and couldn't help but be stunned. It seemed like nothing had happened to them. Haha, leader, this is just for show. With the strength of a golden immortal, he can't even cut through the body of our tiger demon. He wants to kill us? Wishful thinking. One of the demon immortals laughed loudly. The other demon immortals also nodded and laughed. The burly man was also stunned. He couldn't help but wonder if this golden immortal before him was just for show. His actions were as fierce as a tiger's, but he didn't do anything. Yi-Chen smirked and said, "It's been a little long." Bang! Yi-Chen snapped his fingers and spiritual energy vibrated. All the demon immortals were stunned and then laughed. Next, the demon immortals who were laughing the loudest felt the scene in front of them change. Then, their vision turned black. Demon blood spurted out from the headless body and it fell from the sky. The remaining demon immortals were stunned and couldn't help but fall silent. The burly man's heart trembled and he looked at Yi-Chen with fear. "Boss, this." One of the demon immortals looked at the burly man in fear. They clearly saw that Yi-Chen had only used one move. Although it was fast, it was only one move. Several demon immortals with decent strength died, just like that. All the demon immortals were panicking. The human before them was actually so strong. Thinking back to how they had mocked him before, they couldn't help but shiver. Black Tiger's face was full of fear, but his killing intent was still strong. He said, "Sir, we were rash. We didn't offend you. Why do you want to kill us?" "Because you all deserve to die," Yi-Chen said with a cold smile. Even something as good as the immortal transformation fruit was destroyed so easily. Did they not deserve to die? Instantly, all the demon immortals gathered around the burly man, eyeing Yi-Chen covetously. The burly man said coldly, "Brothers, this human is in the golden immortal realm. If we join forces, we will definitely be able to kill him. When the time comes, everything he has will be ours." Yes, Chief is right. He is just one level higher than Chief. He is not that powerful. Even if we join forces, we might not be able to defeat him. A gold immortal must surely possess a great deal of wealth. Once we kill him, he will be ours, one of the Yao deities said. Clearly, he was one of the beefy fellow's trusted aides. As the saying goes, birds die for food, and humans die for wealth. Under such temptation, all the demon gods forgot their fear. They panted heavily and stared at Yi-Chen like hungry wolves. Their best weapons appeared in their hands. "Attack!" The burly man bellowed, and Yao energy spread out from his body, seemingly capable of blotting out the sky. At the same time, he channeled his Yao energy, and a spear appeared in his hand. Next, he shot the spear towards Yi-Chen with lightning-like speed. The other Yao deities knew that this was not the time to be fighting amongst themselves. Thus, they brought out their strongest combat powers to attack Yi-Chen. Yi-Chen frowned slightly. Next, however, the corners of his lips curled upwards. The Yao deities before him were right. If so many Yao deities were to work together, they would be able to stand toe-to-toe with a gold immortal. However, that was just barely. Not to mention, Yi-Chen was no ordinary gold immortal. "You don't know the meaning of death," Yi-Chen said softly as he evaded the attack from the burly man. Next, he waved his hand, and the sword in his hand shone with a terrifying light to send the attacking Yao deity from his right flying. Yi-Chen was taken aback. Next, he evaded the attack from one of the Yao deities. He recalled using at least 50% of his strength earlier, and yet he had only managed to send the Yao deity flying. Rumble, 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 rumble. Dark clouds gathered above the mountaintop, and lightning bolts slowly emerged from the dark clouds. Immediately after that, a red bolt of lightning descended from the sky to strike one of the Yao deities. Caught off guard, the Yao deity cried out wretchedly as it fell to the ground, creating a small crater as a result. Yi Chen's figure flickered and arrived beside a weaker Yao deity. With a stab, the Yao deity's body was pierced through like a piece of tofu. Then, with a slight shake of the sword, the Yao deity was pulled out of its body. Gritting his teeth, the Yao deity swung the weapon in his hand. Turning around, he instantly cleaved Yi Chen into two. Seeing that, the Yao deity was delighted. However, he quickly realized that something was amiss. His body began cracking apart, and the Yi Chen before him had disappeared. After image, the Yao deity roared. Then his entire body exploded into pieces that fell to the ground. Countless lesser demons watched in horror as the lightning bolts wreaked havoc. They all hid in their caves and watched in horror. All the Yao deities' faces changed as they hurriedly looked up at the sky. Dozens of lightning bolts descended from the dark clouds and struck the Yao deities. "Be careful, he can control lightning. Don't let him hit you," the burly man shouted to the Yao gods as he dodged a bolt of lightning. Then, he retreated to a certain spot and formed a seal with his hands. Immediately, a piece of cloth flew out of the mountain and grew larger and larger until it covered the entire dark cloud. Yi Chen frowned slightly. Looking at the wide cloth, his eyes lit up. He controlled the lightning bolts to attack the cloth with all his might. The burly man stood not too far away and watched as Yi Chen kept dodging the attacks. He laughed and said, "It's useless. We 36 Yao deities have formed a great array. Its power is no weaker than a gold immortal's. Originally, we wanted to give you face and let you retreat to avoid trouble. But who would have thought that you would be so tactless? Don't worry, we will make your death easy." After the burly man finished speaking, the long spear in his hand suddenly emitted a light. At the same time, the surrounding spirit energy constantly gathered towards the long spear in the burly man's hand. As time passed, the spirit energy continued to increase, and the long spear emitted a strong light, just like a small sun. "Die!" The burly man roared and broke free from the spear in his hand. The spear in his hand whistled through the air and shot towards Yi Chen's chest. The Yao deity, who was in the midst of attacking, hastily flew to the side, fearful that he would be hit by the spear. After he was safe, he sneered at Yi Chen. He could already imagine Yi Chen being reduced to ashes by the spear. To think that the Black Tiger tribe would have such a treasure. "Looks like my Samsara Legion will have another trump card," Yi Chen said with a smile. His body did not move, and a profound yellow pagoda of heaven and earth appeared behind him. The profound yellow pagoda radiated a formidable power. Seemingly having received some sort of order, it immediately expanded to envelop the spear. Instantly, the dazzling spear was restrained by the profound yellow pagoda. It stopped when it was less than half a step away from Yi Chen. The spear struggled, but was incapable of doing anything. The profound yellow pagoda shook, and a stream of profound yellow energy appeared to refine the spear's power. As time passed, the spear quickly returned to its original appearance. Yi Chen smirked, and he grabbed the spear. Then, he quietly regarded the spear. Chapter 1349. The spear was over 2 meters long and silvery white in color. It was engraved with many patterns, and the tip of the spear shone with a silver light. It was clearly a good spear. "Since you like giving me innate spiritual treasures so much, I won't thank you." Yi Chen smiled. He could give his spear to his subordinate, Zhao Yun. He could definitely reach a higher level. "You?" The large man was furious, but there was nothing he could do. This was the most powerful opponent he had ever faced since he had taken human form. At the same time, he was also the most thick-skinned human. "Leader, what do we do? We can't beat him." The Yao god who had spoken up earlier looked at the large man anxiously, hoping that he would change his mind. The other Yao gods also looked at the large man anxiously, clearly waiting for him to speak. "Human, there is no enmity between us. can you let us go?" The large man sighed. He wanted to be unyielding, but he couldn't. The human in front of him was clearly not someone he could handle. He had already used his strongest move, but it still couldn't stop him. "It's too late," Yichen said. His heart ached when he thought about how the Black Tiger tribe had destroyed over 100 immortal transformation fruits. This was something he couldn't bear. "Since you're so heartless, don't blame us for being cruel. Kill." The large man said savagely. His body transformed, and he roared as he grew to 15 meters tall. A wolf-toothed club appeared in his hand, and he charged at Yichun. The other Yao gods were also filled with killing intent. The current situation was very clear. It was either you die or I die. If they didn't fight, they would only die faster. If they fought, they might have a chance to live. This was no longer about fighting for treasures, but for their own survival. Clearly, the Yao gods were very serious about facing the threat to their lives, and they were even more ferocious than before. Yi Chun sneered. If the Black Tiger tribe hadn't come to kill people, perhaps this wouldn't have happened. But now, there was no turning back because the Yao gods were basically no good. The demon immortals also knew that they couldn't let Yi Chen attack anymore. They all unleashed their divine arts. All sorts of weapons took form and instantly surrounded Yi Chen. Divine arts exploded, bringing with them a powerful force that surged in the air. The big man aimed his spike club at Yi Chen and swung it toward his face. At the same time, the surrounding Yao gods hurriedly followed suit, attacking various parts of Yi Chen's body. "Die!" The big man shouted ferociously, and the strength in his hands increased. Yi Chen's lips curled up as his immortal foundation grew even more solid. The 12th grade Black Lotus of Annihilation appeared, absorbing all the innate techniques in the surroundings, after which it formed a barrier around Yi Chen. Several beams of light shot out from the 12th grade Black Lotus, containing immense might that directly shot towards the demon god. The countenances of all the demon immortals instantly changed as they hurriedly changed their moves, circulating their demonic energy with all their might to defend against the beams of light from the Black Lotus. Yi Chen's silhouette flashed, vanishing from his original location, and appeared behind one of the demon immortals. That demon immortal was shocked and wanted to block, but the beam of light before him was exceedingly powerful. He had already used all his strength to block it, but he could only barely block it. Sword light flashed. The demon immortal before Yi Chen was shattered by the powerful sword chi. After that, the beam of light turned the demon immortal into energy, which was absorbed by the Black Lotus once again. As for Yi Chen, he appeared beside another demon immortal. At the same time, another demon immortal died. The strength of the big man was comparable to a heavenly immortal. He was able to block the beam of light, but he needed some time to do so. At the same time, he also noticed Yi Chen not far away. As for the demon immortals, there were over 10 of them. "Break!" The big man roared furiously. His muscles tensed up and his demonic energy surged. The mace in his hand shone with light, knocking the beam of light far away. Then, he hastily resolved the crisis for the demon immortals beside him. "Human die." The big man's demonic energy surged and spiritual energy circulated all over his body. With a flash, he appeared behind Yi Chen and smashed down with all his might. "Why do you people like to launch sneak attacks so much?" Yi Chen shook his head slightly. He raised the Samsara sword in his hand and easily blocked the mace. Next, the Black Lotus of Devastation rapidly appeared behind the big man. A beam of light shot out from the Black Lotus of Devastation towards the big man's back. "Damn it! Humans must die as well." The big man shouted anxiously at Yi Chen. His whole body ignited, and his strength instantly skyrocketed. He moved to the side and sent a horizontal strike towards Yi Chen's back. The spiked mace shot forward at a sky-piercing speed. The muscular man had sacrificed his lifespan in exchange for this attack, making it stronger than any of his previous attacks. It was equivalent to a full-powered attack from a gold immortal. Yi Chen smiled. Although he was now a golden immortal, his strength and cultivation base were much stronger than a golden immortal. He could even stand up to the Daluo Jinxian. "Break!" Yi Chen's mouth moved slightly, but his voice was like a bell. His immortal foundation appeared behind him, and the Tai Chi red lotus was nurtured within it. It shot out flames and directly burned the mace into ashes. The flames burned the big man's body like maggots. The big man screamed miserably, and his Yao energy burst out. However, it was useless. The muscles all over his body rapidly turned into white bones at a speed visible to the naked eye. Not even the white bones were left. Only his soul was left. He wanted to escape, but the black lotus of devastation devoured him completely. Not long ago, the majestic black tiger overlord had disappeared from the world. Under the attack of the black lotus of devastation, many of the remaining Yao gods died. Only a few Yao gods were left. They looked at Yi Chun in fear. At the same time, they were also afraid. This human before them was like a demon. They simply could not defeat him. Yi Chun could not be bothered to talk nonsense with these Yao gods. With a thought, the black lotus of devastation directly absorbed the heavily wounded Yao gods. When only one Yao god was left, the Yao god could not help but roar. "Don't kill me. I can tell you a secret." The Yao god roared. He was the confidant of the big man from before. Yi Chun was taken aback. With a flash, he appeared not far away from the Yao god. He said disdainfully, "A secret?" The Yao god seemed to have grasped at a life-saving straw. He hurriedly said, "Yes, sir. I know a secret of the Overlord. However, you have to let me live." "Are you threatening me?" Yi Chun narrowed his eyes. Killing intent filled the air. The black lotus of devastation came to the top of the Yao god's head and slowly pressed down. The Yao god trembled. He hurriedly knelt down and cowed out. He said in fear, "Sir, don't. I'm not a threat." The Overlord found a top-grade immortal stone mine. "Oh, top-grade immortal stone?" Yi Chun said with an indifferent expression. However, his heart was burning. He could not wait to go there immediately. "Yes, sir. The Overlord and I found it by accident. However, there was a strange creature there. Its strength was at the Daluo Jinxian level. We could not defeat it at all. We could only pick up the scraps." The Yao god replied with a flattering smile. "That's right. That's why you're still alive," Yi Chun said with a smile. Seeing that the Yao god had relaxed, Yi Chun's divine sense invaded the Yao god's divine sense. Very quickly, he found out the truth and the location of the mine. Yi Chun destroyed the Yao god's consciousness and controlled the black lotus to devour it. He said, "You don't have to kowtow to me. Go and repent to your Overlord." Chapter 1350. Without the support of the demon god's power, the ragged cloth in the sky instantly shrunk back to its original state. Yi Chun kept it in his pocket. He wanted to keep it for research. Ding! Congratulations to Yi Chun for annihilating the first top-level demon clan tribe in the Eldritch world. Reward: 500,000 innate merit points, 500,000 supreme-grade immortal stones, and 10 million medium-grade immortal stones. Ding! Congratulations to Yi Chun for annihilating the first top-level demon clan tribe in the Eldritch world. Reward: 500,000 innate merit points, 500,000 supreme-grade immortal stones, and 10 million medium-grade immortal stones. Ding! Congratulations to Yi Chun for annihilating the first top-level demon clan tribe in the Eldritch world. Reward: 500,000 innate merit points, 500,000 supreme-grade immortal stones, and 10 million medium-grade immortal stones. The notifications were repeated 3 times in a row, causing the entire world to be in an uproar again. It's Great God Yi, top-level demon clan. Damn, this is simply heaven-defying. That's right, that's right. He has so many good things again. He even took the inheritance of a top-level demon clan. Great God Yi, I'm a bed-warming baby. I know all the positions. Brother, I believe what you said is true. Yi Chun is definitely cheating. There's no doubt about it. That's right. I just got 10 immortal stones today. He has another 10 million. Is that so? Brother with immortal stones, come out another day. Let's have a drink. Yi Chun floated in the air. His consciousness enveloped the entire mountain. Then he was delighted. Through his fiery golden eyes, he saw that the entire mountain was hollow. It was filled with countless minerals. I didn't expect there to be so many high-grade materials. It's a pity that the demon clan doesn't know how to forge. Since that's the case, I can only accept it, Yi-chan said with a smile. A reincarnation spear appeared in his hand. The tip of the spear was cold and pointed at the weakest part of the mountain. An extremely powerful beam of light shot into the mountain. With a loud boom, smoke and dust rose up, and a hole was created in the mountain. Due to the overwhelming power of the beam of light, many of the minerals hidden in the mountain were shaken out. Looks like the Yao race is hiding a lot of good stuff. They even hid a Khanate numinous treasure here. What a pity. Yi-chan muttered to himself and entered the mountain in a flash. It was obvious that the interior was not formed on its own. The large man must have ordered all the black tigers to dig it out. Inside, there were a few luminous pearls that illuminated the entire mountain. The leader of the black tigers would often come in to take a look. Yi-chan's spiritual consciousness swept out, and suddenly everything became clear to him. With a wave of his hand, all the materials entered the miniature world. Now is the time to go look for ores. Yi-chan's heart stirred slightly. The entire exquisite pagoda suddenly became larger, directly enveloping the entire mountain. The small demons in the mountain panicked when they saw the huge object in front of them. A kind of instinctive feeling was constantly warning them. The mysterious yellow, exquisite pagoda of heaven and earth trembled. A huge amount of mysterious yellow chi appeared, and the entire mountain began to melt. Some of the weaker small demons began to disappear under the power of the exquisite pagoda, turning into pure energy that was absorbed by the exquisite pagoda. Yi-chan left without looking back. Right now, he only wanted to go to the top-grade immortal stone vein that the demon god mentioned. This was his biggest gain since coming here. A beam of light flew in the sky. Yi-chan found the location of the vein according to the demon god's memory and immediately landed. It was a very small valley. The entrance could barely allow a child to pass through. The top of the valley was only the size of a wash basin. At the same time, it was blocked by a lush tree. Ordinary people would not be able to find it at all. Yi-chan also relied on the strength of his spiritual consciousness to conduct a carpet search. He found that the spiritual energy was constantly gushing up. Yi-chan came to the side of the big tree. Through the skin of the big tree, he saw that it had only been a few months. However, with the help of a huge amount of spiritual energy, it had already grown to the size of a few decades. The dragon-like roots were like a spider's web, almost blocking the entire cave entrance. "It's here." Yi-chan smiled as he looked at the big tree. He took a deep breath and immediately felt refreshed. Yi-chan decided to enter from another entrance. This tree could be considered a natural cover, but now it belonged to him, Yi-chan. The narrow intersection was only enough for a child to bend down and enter. There were hundreds of years old trees growing outside. However, this small hole was flowing with clear spiritual liquid. It was obvious that after a long time of erosion, the rock had a gap. Yi-chan smiled slightly and waved his hand. The spiritual energy fluctuated and turned into a big hand, directly hitting the rock. The originally solid rock was instantly shattered by Yi-chan's magical power. Suddenly, a few top-grade immortal stones flew out of the rock and lay quietly on the ground, emitting spiritual energy fluctuations. Yi-chan laughed and waved his hand to collect them. Then, he controlled his hand to continue digging. The spiritual energy became denser. Walala! The hard rock was penetrated by the big hand, spewing out white mist. The spiritual energy outside the valley suddenly increased by several times. It was like a fog, making it difficult to see clearly. What entered their eyes was a clear spring gushing out from the ground. The erosion of time had turned the hard rock into a medium-sized pool. Then, it flowed out and turned into a small stream, rushing out of the valley. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi-chan for finding a top-grade immortal stone mine for the first time. The reward is 100,000 innate attribute points and 1 million innate merit points. Yi-chan felt an extremely strong spiritual energy. The spiritual energy in front of him was so dense that it had turned into something perfect. However, the world channel was in an uproar. Oh my God, is Yi Jingxian using cheats? The top-grade immortal stone mine has appeared. I have a lot of top-grade immortal stones in my bag, and I was lucky to get them. It's nothing. Hasn't Yi Jingxian always been using cheats? I even suspect that Yi Jingxian is the system's son. He's actually so heaven-defying. Sob, 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 Big Boss Yi, I'll warm you up and unlock all the positions. There's nothing you can't think of. There's nothing I can't do. F*CK, UB*TCH, you're doing it again? I don't even like you. Who do you think you are? Get the hell away from me. That friend with the top-grade immortal stones just now come over. I'll definitely make you my brother. Chapter 1351. As time passed, the cave in front of Yi Chun continued to spew out spiritual energy. The entire mountain range was shrouded in spiritual energy. Strange, isn't there a guardian spirit? Why is there no one? Yi Chun was puzzled. He then came to the edge of the spring and looked at the spiritual water gushing out. The spiritual water was still the size of a fist. Yi Chun found it funny. The Yao God's strength was not enough. Any celestial immortal could kill it. Even the Black Tiger leader could only leave gloomily. The spiritual energy transformed into a giant hand and attacked the spiritual water. Suddenly, there was a rumbling sound, and the rock was pierced through, revealing a black cave. Yi Chun's spiritual sense entered. After sweeping around, he could not help but frown. Under his spiritual sense, there were only spiritual water and immortal stones. Why does it sound different from what the Yao God said? Forget it. Let's go down and take a look. Yi Chun said and waved his hand. A stream of light flew out from the sky and rushed into Yi Chun's body. It was the Black Lotus of Destruction. Following closely behind was the Xianhuang Heaven-Earth Exquisite Pagoda, which directly enveloped Yi Chun. As for Yi Chun, the corners of his mouth rose as he turned and entered the cave. Soon, Yi Chun fell into the cave. Due to the lack of light, the entire mine was pitch black. However, this did not hinder him. In the dark night, it was still as bright as day. His whole body was half a zhang above the ground as he explored the mine. The entire mine was very big, and it continued to extend deeper into the ground. The rocks were all inlaid with top-grade immortal stones. Yi Chun looked even deeper and saw a small stream flowing slowly at the bottom of the mine, leading straight to the pool at the entrance of the cave. This is a spiritual stream formed by two rich spiritual energy. It seems that this time I really made a profit. However, why is it so quiet inside? Yi Chun whispered. It was impossible for a complete mine to have a leaking hole. This was obviously not normal. He did not use his spiritual sense to avoid accidents, but he did not find anything. Who are you? A childish voice came from behind Yi Chun. Who? Yi Chun narrowed his eyes. The Linglong Pagoda emitted a yellow light, illuminating the entire dark mine. Then, the 12 golden lotuses of annihilation flew towards the source of the sound. Wah, who are you? The voice shouted and dodged to the side. Yi Chun turned around and aimed at the source of the sound. What made him feel strange was that his divine sense did not detect any living creatures. He could not see anything in front of him, only cold rocks. Where are you looking? I'm here, the voice said disdainfully. Yi Chun's face fell. He understood that this thing was messing with him. Thinking of this, Yi Chun frowned. Her strength should not be lower than a golden immortal. That's right, there were no signs of life inside. The only explanation was that it had jumped out from the immortal stone. Sun Wukong? Yi Chun's heart skipped a beat. Then he found it funny. Knew I had not become a sage yet. How could she have the Heavenmin stone? Who are you? Come out. I'm too lazy to play hide and seek with you, Yi Chun said to a direction. At the same time, the Godslayer appeared in his hand. You're not fun. You're as boring as the two little demons from before. The voice seemed to be unhappy. Then it disappeared. Yi Chun had fiery golden eyes. The moment the voice moved, he saw clearly that it was a fairy with wings. It It was only the size of a 3 or 4-year-old child. What kind of demon beast are you? Why can't I see your origin? And why did you destroy my home? The little fairy appeared in front of Yi Chun and pointed at Yi Chun angrily. You the demon inside? Yi Chun asked hesitantly. The fairy in front of him had 2 pairs of wings and a pair of small horns on her head. She was a demon beast with a human face. You're the demon. Your whole family are demons. I'm the divine beast with the strongest bloodline. My name isn't Xiaoxi. Where did you come from? And Xiaoxi pointed at Yi Chun unhappily. Divine beast and Xiaoxi? You weren't born from the immortal stone? Yi Chun said in surprise. At the same time, he put his black lotus of destruction into his body. Of course not. I was born from an egg. Why are your words so unpleasant? And Xiaoxi said angrily. She kept circling Yi Chun. Yi Chun was speechless, but he could understand. After all, no human had appeared in the untainted land. It was normal that she did not know him. He said, I'm a human. My name is Yi Chun. And Xiaoxi looked at Yi Chun for a while. She touched the small horns on her head with her small claws and asked doubtfully, Human? Is it delicious? The corners of Yi Chun's mouth twitched. The divine beast in front of him was very strange. He had never seen or heard of such a divine beast in his previous life. He thought to himself, could it be a new species? How many years have you been here? And how do you know what I said? Yi Chun asked. Since she was born from an egg, she must have parents. Me? I've lived here for many years. Bad guy, you better leave quickly. Otherwise, my father will beat you to death when he comes back. And Xiaoxi waved her claws at Yi Chun and said angrily. She looked very cute. Where's your father? Ask him to come out. I want to have a good chat with him. Yi Chun said with a smile. He had been here for so long. Except for the divine beast in front of him, he had not seen anything else. Yi Chun reached out to touch in Xiaoxi's head, but his hand was pushed away. My father is very powerful. With your strength, you can't beat him. And Xiaoxi looked at Yi Chun with disdain. At the same time, she used her wings to move back. Haha, you're quite cute. How about it? Do you want to come with me? I have good food and a lot of fun things to do. Yi Chun said with a smile. He believed that Emperor Jinxiang's theory would not be wrong. He did not believe that this little girl would not take the bait. Sure enough, and Xiaoxi's eyes lit up, but then they dimmed again. She shook her head and said, No, my father said that he will come to pick me up. I can't go play with you. Yi Chun was speechless. He could not help but ask, Who is your father? Why don't you ask him to come out? And Xiaoxi's expression darkened. She said, Why should I tell you? You bad guy. You even destroyed my house. Yi Chun's eyes twitched. He felt that the person in front of him was like an ancestor. She did not fall for his tricks at all, but there was still a lot of information that appeared. The father that this little girl was talking about was definitely not here. Can you tell me what's going on? Yi Chun asked tentatively. He felt that the little girl in front of him was beginning to emit a terrifying aura. It had already surpassed the level of a golden immortal, and it was still rising. Father said that he will come to pick me up. I won't go. And Xiaoxi said while crying. The aura on her body was also getting stronger. Yi Chun felt mentally tired. He was speechless. I know that I will come to pick you up, but you have to tell me where you are going. Above the valley, dark clouds suddenly gathered. Thunder rumbled and countless lightning bolts were brewing. A terrifying aura was constantly emitted. Yi Chun, who was cultivating the divine sky lightning controlling art, immediately felt it. He immediately knew that the little girl in front of him had triggered a heavenly tribulation, and it was very strong. Chapter 1352. The moment he sensed the thunder tribulation, Yi Chun's expression changed. This was Daluo Jinxian's thunder tribulation. Yi Chun's heart skipped a beat when he saw in Xiaoxi's flustered look. Obviously, this girl was not prepared for the thunder tribulation. What a scam. The thunder rumbled. At this time, the thunder tribulation had sensed that in Xiaoxi and Yi Chun were standing together, so it immediately assumed that Yi Chun and Xiaoxi were going through the thunder tribulation together. The power of the thunder tribulation doubled in an instant, and the rumbling thunder covered an area of 1,000,000 miles. The terrifying momentum was majestic and vigorous, and the black thunder tribulation clouds kept rolling, as if there were terrifying demonic beasts churning inside. The demonic beasts on the ground had been pressed to the ground and did not dare to get up. They all fled into the caves with their tails between their legs, praying that the thunder tribulation would not kill them. And Xiaoxi's little face was pale at this time. She looked at Yi Chun with a sobbing voice and said, "You bad guy, it's all your fault. If I die, my father will not let you off." Yi Chun was puzzled. "What does it have to do with me? You attracted the thunder tribulation yourself. I haven't said anything yet. You got me into trouble too." And Xiaoxi was instantly enraged. Her eyes were red as she gritted her teeth and glared at Yi Chun. She roared loudly. "How is it none of your business? I was just staying here to cultivate. I didn't offend anyone, but you came here and kept provoking and threatening me. That's why I couldn't control my aura and attracted the lightning tribulation. How dare you say it's none of your business?" Yi Chun touched his nose awkwardly when he heard this. In that case, it did have something to do with him. He did not kill her, but she died because of him. If Xiaoxi was really killed by the Daluo Jinqian's thunder tribulation, he did have something to do with it. Logically speaking, Yi Chun should have helped Xiaoxi. However, although Xiaoxi was beautiful and cute, she belonged to the demonic beasts after all. In Yi Chun's view, these demonic beasts should be killed unless they were used by him. Even Xiaoxi was no exception. Thinking of this, Yi Chun looked at Xiaoxi and said, "Don't talk about these useless things. I was implicated by you. This is the Daluo Jinxian tribulation, and I am just a little gold immortal. Why don't you say something?" And Xiaoxi's eyes flashed with delight. She gritted her teeth and said, "That's because you deserve it. You only have yourself to blame. If you didn't come here, you bastard, how could you have ended up like this? You can just wait for your death. This is the price you have to pay for provoking me." After hearing this, Yi Chun sneered and shook his head. He sighed and said, "You are really cruel and merciless. Originally, I wanted to help you, but now it seems that there is no need at all. Then you can fend for yourself. Good luck. I really don't care." Then Yi Chun went directly to the cave and sat cross-legged in a relatively dry place. Since he was already here, he might as well take things as they came. Anyway, the thunder tribulation had already locked onto him. Even if he hid at the ends of the earth, he would not be able to escape from the thunder tribulation. Moreover, Yi Chun also wanted to see how different this Daluo Jinxian was. When Yi Chun sat down, he directly suppressed the 12th stage Black Lotus of destruction in his body. He did not intend to let it out to absorb the power of the thunder tribulation. Not only that, but Yi Chun also did not intend to absorb the power of the thunder tribulation. What he wanted to do was to sit on top of the mountain and watch the tigers fight. He wanted to see if Xiaoxi would beg him for mercy when she could not hold on. Yi Chun was almost certain that Xiaoxi would not be able to withstand the thunder tribulation. Originally, she was not prepared to go through the thunder tribulation. Moreover, she was with Yi Chun, so the power of the thunder tribulation was doubled. At that moment, there was a loud rumble. The cave abode in Xiaoxi was mercilessly destroyed by the terrifying lightning. Then, two purple lightning bolts as thick as buckets struck towards Xiaoxi and Yi Chun, one after the other. And Xiaoxi suddenly panicked. She hurriedly took out a huge golden shield to block above her head. Yi Chun glanced at it. This set of black shields was of the immortal level. It was almost enough to withstand the first thunder tribulation. Boom! After an earth-shattering sound, the first thunder tribulation ended, and Xiaoxi controlled the set of immortal-level shields above her head to successfully withstand the first thunder tribulation. She forcibly suppressed the thumping of her heart and turned her head to look at Yi Chun proudly. However, when she saw Yi Chun, she was so angry that her nose became crooked. She saw Yi Chun sitting there calmly, without the slightest trace of smoke or fire. When the purple thunder tribulation landed on him, it naturally dissipated. Yi Chun slowly took out a tea set and poured himself a cup of clear and fragrant immortal tea. After taking a sip, he felt refreshed. Then, Yi Chun raised the teacup in his hand and gestured to Xiaoxi. He smiled and said, Do you want to come have a drink? I'm not a stingy person. It's not my style to leave someone in the lurch. If you're willing to come over and kneel down and acknowledge me as your master, I'll help you withstand the thunder tribulation today. How about that? And Xiaoxi roared angrily. You want me to acknowledge you as my master? Keep dreaming. Why don't you take a look at yourself? Even if I, in Xiaoxi, fail the thunder tribulation, even if I'm struck to death by the thunder tribulation, even if I jump from here to hell, I'll never yield to you. Yichen shook his head in disappointment and said slowly, this kind of thing can't be forced. Everything is voluntary. Since you're not willing, I won't force you. Take care of yourself. This is only the first thunder tribulation. I'd like to see how many thunder tribulations you can withstand. Humph, you can't even protect yourself. How can you still have the mood to meddle in my business? I think you'll be turned into ashes very soon. Yichen immediately laughed and said, then I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. While they were talking, the second thunder tribulation had already fallen. It carried an incomparably terrifying aura. Thousands of thunder tribulations, more violent than the previous one, directly struck down on them. The 12th grade black lotus of destruction in Yichen's body was restless, conveying an incomparable thirst to Yichen. It was like a starving baby that couldn't wait to go out and have a big meal. Yichen suppressed the 12th grade black lotus of destruction and coaxed it like he was coaxing a child. It's not time yet. I'll let you eat your fill in a while. At the same time, Yichen mobilized the other treasures in his body to resist the Daluo Jinxian level thunder tribulation. Chapter 1353. And Xiaoxi had no time to bicker with Yichen now. Her little face was tense, and her eyes were wide open. She was on full alert as she controlled the huge immortal shield above her head. Under Xiaoxi's control, the immortal black shield suddenly expanded dozens of times in an instant. It was like a huge black egg that was about to wrap Xiaoxi in it and resist the second thunder tribulation without any blind spots. The deafening rumbles shook the heavens and the earth, as if they were going to flip the world upside down. And Xiaoxi's cave, which had a huge hole in it, was also trembling, as if it could collapse at any time. Fortunately, the second thunder tribulation came and went quickly. After the second thunder tribulation, and Xiaoxi passed through it safely. She let out a long sigh of relief and patted her towering chest. Then, she returned the black shield to its original state. She found that the surface of the black shield was full of holes from the thunder tribulation. Although immortal weapons and magic treasures had the ability to repair themselves, this was only the second thunder tribulation. When Xiaoxi turned her head to look at Yichen again, her beautiful eyebrows furrowed. She had found that something was wrong. She was having such a hard time resisting the thunder tribulation, but Yichen was still at ease, as if he did not feel any strain at all. This was not logical at all. This was a Daluo Jinxian level thunder tribulation. As long as she passed through it successfully, she would be able to reach the level of a divine demon. Yichen was only a golden immortal. This level of thunder tribulation should be very difficult and terrifying for him, but he was sitting there fearlessly. What kind of trump card did he have? Rumble. Thunderclouds pressed down and thunder roared. The third thunder tribulation had already descended. This time, both the quantity and the power of the thunder tribulation had doubled. Each thunder tribulation was as thick as a water tank. Moreover, the purple color of the thunder tribulation was constantly deepening and spreading towards black. Its power had also increased by more than 10 times compared to the second thunder tribulation. There were more than 10,000 thunder tribulations like this in total, and they were all aimed at Yichen and Xiaoxi respectively. Rumble. These thunder tribulations seemed to want to destroy everything. The ground of the cave cracked into a huge crack that was dozens of feet wide and bottomless. The dark crack was like the huge mouth of a demonic beast that could swallow everything at any time. And Xiaoxi's frail figure swayed amidst the thunderbolts. It was obvious that the fairy weapon shield was having a hard time resisting the thunderbolts. And Xiaoxi bellowed coldly. Then, she injected a stream of spiritual qi into the fairy weapon shield. Once again, the situation was stabilized. After the third thunder tribulation, and Xiaoxi's face was a little pale. This set of black immortal shield had reached its limit. More than 80% of the formation inside had been destroyed. Obviously, it could not be used anymore. And Xiaoxi was heartbroken. This set of black shields was the first set of equipment she had ever obtained in her life. Today, it was destroyed just like that. At this time, Yi Qin's voice sounded again. He looked at Xiaoxi calmly and said, "Ha, you've suffered internal injuries, right? Don't continue to be stubborn. This is only the third thunder tribulation. I think you should know that you can't withstand everything that comes next. Why don't you obediently submit to me and acknowledge me as your master? As long as you are willing to acknowledge me as your master, you will belong to me, Yi Qin. With my protection, you can eat and drink to your heart's content. I will take care of all the dangers. What do you think? The conditions are good enough, right? Let me tell you, if you miss this opportunity, you won't get another one. You're daydreaming, you big bad guy. I and Xiaoxi will not submit to you even if I die." And Xiaoxi glared at Yi Qin fiercely. Her silver and neat little white teeth kept grinding, as if she wanted to pounce on Yi Qin and bite off a piece of meat from his body. Yi Qin smiled and gave her a thumbs up. He shook it in Xiaoxi and said, "Good, good. You have character. I like it. Then I wish you good luck. I'll wait and see." And Xiaoxi gritted her teeth and looked a little hesitant. In the end, she made up her mind, and an ancient purple zither appeared in her hand. This zither was transparent and filled with a very comfortable aura. Yi Qin's heart skipped a beat, and Xiaoxi really had a lot of treasures. This zither was obviously an acquired spiritual treasure. Looking at Xiaoxi's appearance, it was not difficult to tell that she liked this zither very much. However, at this time, there was no other way. She could only use it to resist the thunder tribulation. After all, if she failed to survive the thunder tribulation, everything would be over. The zither floated up and suspended above Xiaoxi's head. It emitted a purple hazy light and enveloped Xiaoxi in it. After being enveloped by the purple light, Xiaoxi's expression became much calmer, as if she was returning to her mother's embrace. It seemed that she would be safe and sound under the cover of the purple zither. However, Yi Qin shook his head. It was not difficult for him to see that although the purple zither was an acquired spiritual treasure, it was obviously not a defensive acquired spiritual treasure. It was impossible for her to resist the thunder tribulation at the level of Daluo Jingxian. He did not say anything and continued to sit and watch. Rumble. The fifth terrifying thunderbolt fell. At this time, the color of the thunderbolt had completely turned black. This kind of black thunderbolt seemed to destroy everything. Each of the 10,000 black thunderbolts was as thick as a small house. There was almost no other color as far as the eye could see. The surrounding light seemed to have been absorbed by these black thunderbolts. The purple zither sensed great danger and also emitted a purple brilliance, enveloping itself and Xiaoxi. These black thunderbolts were like a kind of unreasonable and violent bandits, constantly tearing the purple zither's defense. It was as if 10,000 violent bandits were violently tearing the clothes of a weak little girl. The purple zither was already very tired to resist this thunder tribulation. Before Xiaoxi could breathe a sigh of relief, the sixth thunder tribulation had already fallen. The power of each thunder tribulation was several times stronger than the previous one. The purple zither was already on the verge of collapse. The strings on the zither were also breaking one after another. Xiaoxi's expression changed drastically. Her little face was pale with distress. Thunderbolts were constantly attacking Xiaoxi through the broken defense net of the purple thunderbolts. Immediately, Xiaoxi was bombarded and she screamed continuously. Her body was dripping with blood and the smell of burnt flesh was everywhere. After the sixth lightning tribulation ended, the charred purple zither fell from the top of his head. Xiaoxi also fell to the ground weakly. Chapter 1354. Seeing Xiaoxi's miserable appearance, Yi Qin grinned. He twitched his nose and asked, "It smells so good. It smells like roasted meat. What is your true form? Why does it smell so good? It smells like the roasted rabbit I've eaten before. Are you a rabbit spirit? And Xiaoxi glared at Yi Chun fiercely. She was too weak to continue arguing with Yi Chun, although she wanted to bite off a piece of Yi Chun's flesh. And Xiaoxi kept roaring in her heart, "You're the rabbit. Your whole family are rabbits. You want to trick me? No way." The sixth lightning tribulation ended. In fact, Yi Chun was also having a hard time. Although the swallowing heaven and swallowing earth could devour most of the energy of the lightning tribulation, it was still difficult for him without the help of the 12th grade Black Lotus of Destruction. After all, this was the Daluo Jinxian tribulation. The 12th grade Black Lotus of Destruction was waiting to be fed, but Yi Chun had been suppressing it and not letting it take action. Otherwise, if it absorbed all the lightning tribulation, he would not be able to achieve his goal. Yi Chun continued to persuade. "Little rabbit, don't force yourself. I bet you can definitely survive the 7th lightning tribulation. Why don't you acknowledge me as your master, and I'll help you?" At this time, and Xiaoxi had already noticed something strange about Yi Chun. This guy was clearly a golden immortal, but he was able to handle the strengthened version of the Daluo Jinxian tribulation with ease, as if he was not hurt at all. However, there was no way she would acknowledge Yi Chun as her master. She stubbornly turned her head and took out 2,000-year-old ginsengs from her storage equipment. She chewed and swallowed them, quickly replenishing her consumed vitality. Yi Chun said in surprise, "You like eating radishes so much, and you still say you're not a rabbit." And Xiaoxi was so angry that her face turned red. She simply turned her head and refused to listen to Yi Chun. She was afraid that if she continued like this, she would be angered to death by Yi Chun. After swallowing 2,000-year-old ginseng, and Xiaoxi's complexion looked much better. However, she still hadn't returned to her peak state. Her purple zither couldn't be restored either. This made Xiaoxi's heart ache. She gently stroked the broken strings with infinite sadness and put the guqin into her portable space. It was also at this moment that the 7th lightning tribulation descended once again. This time, the lightning tribulation was more terrifying than the previous 6 combined. However, that terrifying pressure made Xiaoxi unable to stand up. She was almost lying on the ground. Her face was flushed red. She tried her best to support herself, but it was extremely difficult for her to sit up. She also had a realization in her heart. She was afraid that she would not be able to hold on. This 7th lightning tribulation would definitely shatter her into pieces. As the saying goes, it is easy to die calmly, but difficult to die generously. And Xiaoxi finally felt the fear of death as death approached. Her little face was deathly pale, her legs trembled uncontrollably, and her eyes were filled with endless terror. "I really don't want to die. I still have to wait for Father to come back." She panted heavily as she struggled in her heart. She turned her head to look at Yi Chun again. She bit her lower lip and asked, "If I acknowledge you as my master, can you really protect me and let me safely pass through the lightning tribulation?" Yi Chun immediately smiled. "You don't have to doubt that. My words are the golden rule." And Xiaoxi finally gritted her teeth and said, "All right, as long as you can help me pass through the lightning tribulation, I will acknowledge you as my master." However, Yi Chun shook his head and said, "You're mistaken. The procedure is for you to acknowledge me as your master first. Then I will help you pass through the lightning tribulation. You can't get this sequence wrong." And Xiaoxi was so angry that her face turned red. "You don't believe me. You're so smart." Faced with such an honest Yi Chun, and Xiaoxi didn't know what to say. She also understood that if she became a heavenly demon after the lightning tribulation, Yi Chun wouldn't be able to do anything if she went back on her word. And Xiaoxi's original plan was to trick him into helping her pass for the lightning tribulation. Once she became a Daluo Jinxian, what could he do if she didn't agree? At this moment, the 7th lightning tribulation was descending lower and lower, and it was about to fall. And Xiaoxi had no choice but to squeeze out a drop of blood essence and chant an incantation. An ancient master-servant contract was completed. Yi Chun took the master servant contract that Xiaoxi handed to him with a wave of her hand and checked it. After confirming that it didn't play any tricks, he nodded with satisfaction. He placed the master servant contract into his mind and felt that he already had an inexplicable connection with Xiaoxi. He could decide whether Xiaoxi lived or died with a single thought. Boom! With an earth-shattering explosion, the seventh lightning tribulation, which had been brewing for a long time, finally fell. Within a radius of hundreds of miles, thunderbolts filled the sky as if they had filled the entire space. The terrifying thunderbolts were so black that they looked a little white. The half-black and half-white thunderbolts had extremely terrifying fluctuations. And Xiaoxi screamed in fear, "Save me!" In the blink of an eye, a figure flashed. Yi Chun had already stood up. He laughed wildly and shielded Xiaoxi behind him. And Xiaoxi saw the tall figure and heaved a sigh of relief for a moment. Time to get to work. Yi Chun instantly released the 12th grade Black Lotus of Annihilation, which he couldn't wait any longer. In the blink of an eye, it appeared above Yi Chun. The Black Lotus of Annihilation instantly covered an area of hundreds of miles. The 12th grade Black Lotus of Annihilation was starving. Before the lightning of annihilation fell, countless black lights soared into the sky and took the initiative to pull the terrifying black and white thunderbolts, swallowing them directly. Yi Chun didn't stay idle. The Daluo Jinqian's lightning tribulation was too terrifying. Anyway, the 12th grade Black Lotus of Annihilation couldn't swallow it by itself. He simply used the swallowing heaven, swallowing earth to swallow all the remaining thunderbolts. The Daluo Jinqian's lightning tribulation seemed to be enraged and roared even more violently. The demon clans within a radius of tens of millions of miles were all dumbfounded. They had never seen such a terrifying lightning tribulation. It was even more terrifying than the heavenly demon tribulation. It was like the end of the world, bringing a feeling of extreme despair. And Xiaoxi breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, she was glad that she had made the decision. No matter what, he couldn't have survived the seventh lightning tribulation. At this time, Yi Chun had already soared into the sky and rushed directly into the tribulation cloud. The Black Lotus of Annihilation bared its fangs and brandished its claws, madly devouring the thunderbolts in the tribulation cloud. Yi Chun also fully launched the swallowing heaven, swallowing earth, swallowing heaven, swallowing earth, as if to compete with the Black Lotus of Annihilation. The tribulation cloud was furious. Countless thunderbolts directly exploded in the sky. The surrounding mountains were blown to pieces just because of the aftermath. Chapter 1355. The mountains within a radius of dozens of miles were all flattened, leaving terrifying craters in the ground. And Xiaoxi raised her head and looked at the godlike man in the sky. She felt even more puzzled. Who was this person? He clearly had the cultivation of a golden immortal, but he could deal with the heavenly tribulation like it was nothing. The thunder rumbled for about an hour before the tribulation clouds in the sky dispersed reluctantly. The sky regained its color, and light returned to the earth. The demons who were shrouded in fear all heaved a sigh of relief. It was finally over. After the lightning tribulation ended, and Xiaoxi's body underwent tremendous changes. A terrifying energy rose from within her body and rapidly transformed her body. Her injured meridians were also rapidly recovering. An aura that belonged to a heavenly demon emanated from her body. However, most of the lightning tribulation this time was because Yi Chun had helped her through it. Therefore, Xiaoxi's aura was much weaker than the average heavenly demon. Yi Chun glanced at Xiaoxi from the sky. He knew that Xiaoxi was no match for him at this level. Xiaoxi suddenly gained a lot of confidence after gaining so much power. She raised her head and looked at Yi Chun in the clouds. A dangerous glint flashed across her eyes. Then, she quickly dispersed unwillingly. The master-servant contract had been signed. Even if she broke through to the heavenly demon level, her life and death were in Yi Chun's hands. And Xiaoxi sighed. This cunning human was too despicable. He actually wanted her to sign a contract before he was willing to help. This was a big mistake. Naturally, the change in Xiaoxi's eyes could not be hidden from Yichun. He descended from the sky and stood in front of Xiaoxi. His face was slightly flushed, and he seemed to be a little unsteady. And Xiaoxi asked, "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" Yichun snorted coldly. "Nonsense. Do you think it's so easy to defeat these lightning tribulations? I lost too much to help you through the tribulation. Tell me, how do you plan to compensate me?" Of course, Yichun did not tell the truth. The reason why he looked like he was drunk was not because he had suffered internal injuries, but because he had eaten too much. The devouring heaven, devouring earth had not been completely digested in a short period of time. It was still rampaging through his body, which was why Yichun looked like he was injured, his face flushed red. And Xiaoxi immediately snorted and said, "Haven't I already signed a master-servant contract with you? You're not a good person for looting a burning house." Yichun found an intact rock and sat down. As he circulated his energy, he digested the dishonest energy in his body. He sneered and said, "What a joke. I saved your life, and now I'm taking advantage of your misfortune? Cut the crap. Tell me honestly, what is your true form? What kind of abilities do you have? Show me your true form." Yichun was also puzzled. This and Xiaoxi seemed to have some background. Even with his eyes of fire and gold, he could not tell what her true form was. And Xiaoxi looked at Yichun as if she had suffered a great humiliation. Yichun's expression was grim, and his eyes were cold. He could also sense Yichun's decisiveness to kill. Right now, even his life was in Yichun's hands. There was no other way. With a flash of light, and Xiaoxi turned into a beautiful, rainbow-colored little bird. This little bird was about the size of a palm. Its entire body was sparkling and translucent, as if it was carved out of top-grade crystal. Its pair of red eyes were like agate, sparkling brightly. This little bird spoke, "This is my true form. We are treasure-seeking spiritual birds. We are born with an extremely sharp perception towards heavenly treasures and various treasures. Are you satisfied now?" Satisfied? Not only was he satisfied, but he was also very surprised. When Yichun heard that in Xiaoxi was a treasure-seeking spiritual bird, his heart began to thump violently. In his previous life, he had heard of divine beasts called treasure-seeking spiritual birds. They were natural treasure-seeking radars. However, treasure-seeking spiritual birds were too good at disguising themselves. They could only be found by chance. Furthermore, treasure-seeking spiritual birds were very cunning and very fast. In any case, before Yichun's rebirth, no player had been able to catch a treasure-seeking spiritual bird. Who would have thought that he would be able to catch a treasure-hunting psychic bird this time? This trip was really worth it. Yichun looked at Xiaoxi with interest. He said, "Since you say that you are a treasure-seeking spiritual bird, why are you so shabby? You have at least one acquired spiritual treasure. Do you live up to your title of treasure-seeking spiritual bird? If you have more treasures on you, you should be able to survive the lightning tribulation without my help." And Xiaoxi was about to cry. With a flash of light, she returned to her human form. She bit her red lips and said, "Do you think I want to? I'm not an adult yet. My father has always asked me to wait for him here. However, I've waited for so many years, and my father still hasn't returned. Furthermore, those idiots from the Black Tiger tribe are secretly watching. If they didn't bring you here, I wouldn't have triggered the lightning tribulation. Can you blame me for everything?" Looking in Xiaoxi's tear-stained face, Yichun rubbed his nose. He did not feel embarrassed at all. Humans and demons were at odds with each other. If she did not come over now, was she going to wait until he survived the lightning tribulation and became a divine demon? Wouldn't that be asking for trouble? He waved his hand and comforted her, saying, "All right, don't cry. Since you've signed a contract, you're mine. If anything happens, I'll protect you. You won't be able to bear any grievances if you follow me. Tell me about your father. Why hasn't he returned yet?" Yichun had a good idea in his heart. Although it was good to have a treasure-hunting psychic bird, who would complain about having more? If he could get his hands on her father, wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? Although her father might be a divine demon, As long as Xiaoxi was in his hands, Yichen naturally had the confidence to make the other party hesitate to attack. And Xiaoxi seemed to have accepted her fate. She wiped her tears and sat on another rock with her small hands holding her skirt. She looked into the distance with one hand supporting her cheek and said, "I don't remember. Not long after I was born, my father left. He said that he was going to find something for me and asked me to stay here obediently and not leave. But after he left, he never came back. It's been 800 years since I was born, and my father still hasn't returned. I'm worried that if I leave, my father won't be able to find me when he comes back, so I've been waiting here for him." Yichen looked at this stubborn girl speechlessly. Her father had been missing for 800 years, but she was still waiting here obediently. It was obvious that something had happened to that old treasure-hunting psychic bird. Yichen deliberated for a moment before saying, "Then it's not a good idea for you to keep waiting here. You should think about it differently. Maybe your father is trapped somewhere and is waiting for you to save him. If you're worried that your father won't be able to find you when he comes back, you can make a mark. Also, try to recall what your father said when he left. What was he looking for?" Chapter 1356. And Xiaoxi had a headache. She covered her head with both hands and tried her best to recall. "I don't remember. I was too young at that time. I only remember that my father said that the thing was very important to us, the treasure-hunting psychic birds, and that we must find it. But I really don't remember what it is." At this time, Yichen had swallowed all the violent thunder power in his body. He felt that the energy in his body had improved greatly, and so did the 12th grade Black Lotus of Destruction. It should be able to level up after a few more times. Yichen stood up and walked over to Xiaoxi. He patted her shoulder and said, "If you can't remember, take your time. There will be a day when you remember. Leave a mark in the cave and come with me. Trust me, I will try my best to help you find your father." And Xiaoxi stood up blankly. To be honest, she had no idea what to do now. She wanted to continue waiting, but she also felt that what Yichen said made sense. If her father was trapped somewhere and could not get out, waiting here would be meaningless. And Xiaoxi looked back at the cave that she had lived in for 800 years. It had now become a ruin, and a trace of reluctance flashed in her eyes. In the end, she made a hand gesture that no one could understand. A ball of colorful light directly disappeared from the cave, leaving a mark that only the treasure-hunting psychic birds could understand on a hidden wall. If her father could come back and see this plan, he would understand everything that had happened here. Perhaps then, her father would have a way to save her from Yichen. Yichen did not know what kind of message Xiaoxi left in the imprint. Of course, he did not care. If her father came to find him, it would save him a lot of effort. After opening the cave, Xiaoxi followed Yichen and said in confusion, "Hey, where are we going next?" Yichen turned his head and said to Xiaoxi coldly, "Since we have signed a master-servant contract, we should follow the rules. You can either call me your majesty or master. Do you understand?" "Why?" "No reason. This is the rule." And Xiaoxi pursed her lips. She knew that she could not resist, so she said reluctantly, "Master, where are we going next?" Yichen smiled. "Didn't you say that you were a treasure-hunting spiritual bird? Let me see what you're capable of. I don't keep trash here. If you can satisfy me, I will help you find your father. If you can't," and Xiaoxi asked hopefully, "Will you let me go?" Yichen took a deep breath. "You're thinking too much. I will roast you and eat you. I have never eaten a treasure-hunting psychic bird before. When you were undergoing your tribulation just now, I smelled that barbecue smell pretty good. You better not give me the chance." And Xiaoxi immediately shuddered. The thought of being eaten made all the hair on her body stand on end. In her eyes, Yichen had become a synonym for terror, power, violence, savagery, and cruelty. He wanted to eat her up just because of a disagreement. This was too terrifying. Yichen impatiently urged, "What are you waiting for? Find me 10,000 or 20,000 of those big radishes that you ate last time." And Xiaoxi was stunned for a moment, and it took her a long time to understand what Yichen was talking about. She immediately complained in her heart, "Are you that ignorant? Is that a big radish? That's 1,000-year-old ginseng. And Xiaoxi rolled her eyes and suddenly said, Master, your taste is too bad. How is that big radish good? I know that there is a cold pond 9 million miles away from here. There are good things in there that can improve one's aptitude. Yi Chen was stunned. He could not help but ask, You said something good that can improve one's constitution. What is that? Also, how can you know that there is such a thing from 9 million miles away? Don't lie to me, or I will let you know the price you have to pay for lying to me. Facing Yi Chen's cold gaze, and Xiaoxi couldn't help but swallow her saliva. Then she straightened her back, straightened her neck, and said, If you don't believe me, then forget it. Right now, I can only sense the heavenly treasures within a range of 10,000 miles. However, that was what my father told me in the past. He said that there was a dark spirit fruit in the cold pond 9 million miles away. It could improve one's bone structure, and he said that he would pick it for me when I grew up. But he never came back. Yi Chen was suddenly moved. He came out to find heavenly materials and earthly treasures to improve his constitution. He had so many generals under him, and Yi Chen wanted to improve their constitution to at least the level of sage to be. However, the effect of swallowing heavenly materials and earthly treasures to improve one's constitution was a little slow. It would be great if there were heavenly materials and earthly treasures that could directly improve one's constitution. However, there were very few heavenly materials and earthly treasures that could directly improve one's constitution. They could only be found by chance. Now that he had the treasure-hunting psychic bird, it was simply a timely help. Yi Chen did not say anything else. After asking Xiaoxi for her location, he grabbed Xiaoxi's fair wrist and directly used his ability to travel through space. In just a few breaths' time, they appeared 9 million kilometers away. In a desolate forest, they found a cold pond that constantly emitted white mist. Yi Chen looked at the huge lake that was thousands of miles long and wide. He turned to Xiaoxi and asked, Does your family call such a big lake a pond? And Xiaoxi raised her head and said confidently, Of course. It's so small. What else can it be called if it's not a pond? You haven't seen a lake before. It stretches for tens of thousands of miles and is boundless. That's amber. Such a small puddle can only be called a pond. My father said that the water in this cold pond is very cold. It doesn't freeze all year round. However, if ordinary demons enter it, they will immediately become ice sculptures. I found a place for you. It's up to you whether you can get the green darkness spiritual fruit or not. After saying that, and Xiaoxi looked at Yi Chen provocatively. Yi Chen gnashed his teeth. This girl was still unconvinced and lacking in manners. She was obviously provoking him. However, Yi Chen was not very disgusted by this kind of rebellious little girl. It was much better than those who appeared obedient on the surface but played tricks in secret. Yi Chen did not expect Xiaoxi to help him find the green darkness spiritual fruit. After all, the treasure-hunting psychic bird was not good at fighting, but it was extremely sensitive to the aura of treasures. Chapter 1357. Yi Chen didn't want to argue with him. He said in a deep voice, Then feel if there's still the aura of the green underworld spiritual fruit in the cold pool. After all, 800 years have passed. Who knows if it has been taken away by other demon clans? When it was time to get down to business, and Xiaoxi didn't dare to fool around. She closed her eyes and carefully felt for a while. Then, she opened her eyes and nodded. She said firmly, I can feel the aura of the green underworld spiritual fruit at the bottom of the cold pool. It's still there, and there's a lot of it. Then wait for me here. I'll be back soon. Wait a minute. A trace of hesitation flashed across Xiaoxi's eyes, but she still said, Master, be careful. There's a heavenly demon flood dragon sleeping in the cold pool. Don't wake it up. Yi Chen was stunned. His eyes turned cold as he said, Why did you only tell me such an important thing now? And Xiaoxi grabbed the corner of her clothes with both hands and said with grievance, I just remembered. Yi Chen looked at her deeply and said, Don't do it again. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the consequences. Then, Yi Chun rushed into the sky, took out the water spirit pearl, and jumped directly into the cold pool. When Yi Chun jumped into the cold pool, the water automatically parted to two sides. The water spirit pearl was a primordial spiritual treasure. It automatically formed a green water shield around Yi Chun. Seeing this, and Xiaoxi widened her eyes in surprise. She didn't expect that this bad guy had such a good thing. Originally, she wanted to see Yi Chun become a drowned rat after jumping into the water. Now, she was a little disappointed. However, and Xiaoxi's lips curled into a dangerous smile. She muttered gloatingly in a low voice, "Hee hee, you still don't take the flood dragon seriously? Don't think that it's so easy to get the green underworld spiritual fruit. If it were so easy, my father would have brought it back for me. I like to know how powerful this master is." Unfortunately, Yi Chun did not hear in Xiaoxi's muttering. At this time, Yi Chun had already entered the cold pond. He could also feel the huge water pressure coming from all around him. Yi Chun also understood that the density of the water in the cold pond was very high. It was dozens of times higher than ordinary water. This was a bit strange. No wonder Yi Chun couldn't see any aquatic creatures in the water. There were no traces of fish or turtles. Where was the flood dragon that Xiaoxi mentioned? With the protection of the water spirit pearl, Yi Chun continued to dive down. After descending several hundred feet, Yi Chun realized that he had only descended less than half the distance. How deep was this pool? After descending for about 15 minutes, Yi Chun had already descended more than 1,000 feet. Through the water spirit pearl, Yi Chun also discovered a misty green light in front of him. His heart suddenly stirred as he moved forward. Suddenly, Yi Chun saw a green light in front of him. It was lingering in the water, and a green light was gently rotating. There was a green fruit tree growing on a reef in the cold pond. Although it was very far away, Yi Chun could still see that there were fist-sized green fruits growing on those fruits. A burst of fragrance penetrated the thick, cold pond water, and Yi Chun could still clearly smell it. That smell was simply refreshing. This should be the green underworld spiritual fruit that Xiaoxi mentioned. Yi Chun didn't dare to be negligent. He immediately slid over. Yi Chun's experience in treasure hunting was quite rich. In his experience, this kind of heavenly treasure would definitely be guarded by a demonic beast. He first carefully observed the surroundings, but didn't see anything wrong. Yi Chun's expression changed. Yi Chun still felt a little strange. First of all, the water quality of this cold pond was extremely cold, and the quality was also very high. Logically speaking, this kind of green underworld spiritual fruit shouldn't be growing at a depth of 1,000 feet. However, it was right in front of him. This wasn't fake. Moreover, such a large cold pond didn't even have a single aquatic creature. It seemed a little strange. However, Yi Chun had always been decisive in killing. He didn't care about this for now. He had to obtain these green underworld spiritual fruits first. Yi Chun used his divine sense to envelop the area. He roughly guessed that there were several hundred green underworld spiritual fruit trees on this reef. There were also several tens of thousands of green underworld spiritual fruits. Although he still didn't know how much these green underworld spiritual fruits could improve his bone structure, he would first store them into his pocket world. Therefore, Yi Chun waved his big sleeve. These green underworld spiritual fruits, along with the reef below, were all methodically stored into Yi Chun's pocket world. What made him a little worried was that his pocket world didn't have this kind of cold pond. In other words, it didn't have the conditions for these green underworld spiritual fruits to grow. Thus, Yi Chun directly used his divine sense to open up a huge pit that was dozens of miles long and wide in his pocket world. Then, like a flowing river, he drew all the water from the cold pond into his pocket world. With Yi Chun as the center, a huge whirlpool was formed. Countless amounts of cold pond water flowed through Yi Chun's palm and were all sucked into his pocket world. And Xiaoxi, who was floating above the cold pond, was suddenly surprised. She didn't understand what was going on under the water. How could there be such a big whirlpool on the surface of the water? Yi Chun's speed was very fast. In just a few moments, several million tons of cold pond water had entered his pocket world and settled down there. The sudden appearance of a huge cold pond made the craftsmen in the pocket world very surprised. They didn't know what His Majesty was doing. However, when the 10 blacksmiths discovered the water quality of the cold pond, their faces immediately turned red with excitement. This was simply a natural quenching good thing. With this cold pond water, when they refined tools in the future, their power would be increased by at least 10%. Yichen naturally didn't know that these craftsmen were so happy. However, he had collected several million tons of cold pond water at once. It was enough for them to use. Just as Yichen was about to leave, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He felt the cold pond water around him gently vibrate. Then, a huge monster rose up from under his feet. A terrifying aura instantly shrouded Yichen. Could it be that this was the flood dragon? Yichen narrowed his eyes and immediately used his fiery golden eyes to look around. When he saw clearly what was in front of him, he was immediately shocked. He saw that under his feet, which was the original reef, there was a flood dragon that was more than 10,000 meters long and as thick as a small mountain slowly rising up. This huge flood dragon was covered in thick reefs. As it shook its head and tail, these reefs rolled down one after another, revealing sinister scales that emitted a dim light. The aura of this flood dragon was definitely above that of a demon god. This flood dragon was originally sleeping, but now was about to wake up. Chapter 1358. Thinking of this, Yichen suddenly frowned. Although Yichen was not afraid of the heavenly demon, this was the cold pool, the home of the flood dragon. Fighting with the flood dragon here would be asking for trouble. Thinking of this, Yichen flew towards the surface of the water without hesitation. At this moment, the flood dragon finally opened its pair of eyes that were the size of water tanks. The gold and diamond-shaped pupils exuded a boundless aura of tyranny and ferocity. When it felt that all the dark spiritual fruits outside had disappeared, it suddenly roared angrily, "Damn it! Who dares to steal my treasure?" The roar of the flood dragon caused the thousands of miles wide pool to shake violently, setting off huge waves that were hundreds of feet high on the surface of the cold pool. And Xiaoxi was so shocked that she almost fell from the top. Her face turned pale, and she murmured, "Oh no, this bastard really alarmed this terrifying guy. Will he be swallowed in one gulp?" And Xiaoxi's heart was full of contradictions. Of course, she knew that Yichen had many trump cards and was very powerful. However, the flood dragon was too terrifying. She somewhat hoped that Yichen could escape successfully. At this moment, the flood dragon discovered that Yichen was running away. It suddenly roared crazily and opened its bloody mouth. A terrifying suction force came from the mouth of the flood dragon. Yichen felt that he was involuntarily pulled back and fell into the mouth of the flood dragon. Yichen suddenly roared and released all his strength. The speed of his fall suddenly stopped, and then he quickly swam towards the surface of the water. Yichen had now operated the 9 revolutions mysterious art in his body to the extreme. If he wanted to fight, he had to go out and fight again. Under the water, his strength was suppressed. In the face of such a terrifying heavenly demon-level flood dragon, he would be very passive. Now it was time to go all out. Yichen almost pushed his speed to the extreme, as fast as lightning. With the help of the water spirit pearl, he directly shot out of the cold pool like a cannonball. There was a violent explosion in the air. When the flood dragon found that Yichen had escaped, it became angry. Its huge body broke through the cold pool and caught up in the blink of an eye. Before Xiaoxi could react, Yichen had already appeared beside her. Yichen grabbed Xiaoxi's wrist with one hand and said, "Get out of my way." Then the two directly left the place and appeared hundreds of miles away in the sky. After the flood dragon appeared, it immediately locked onto Yichen's trace and let out a loud roar angrily. The surrounding mountains shook violently, and the rocks tumbled. Some of the lesser demons and metamorphosis stage demons within 100 miles were all shaken to the point that they bled from their 7 orifices and fell to the ground dead. It was like the end of the world. The blood and chi of those who died were swallowed by the flood dragon at the same time. The flood dragon's body shook and turned into a 30 feet tall, bearded man, holding a huge golden hammer in his hand. Then his body flashed and directly appeared hundreds of miles away in the sky, facing Yi Chun from a distance. And Xiaoxi was already extremely anxious. She kept tugging at Yi Chun's sleeve and muttering softly, "It's over, it's over. Master, why don't you run faster? Now that the flood dragon is caught up, it's going to be troublesome. Why don't I resist it for a while and you run faster?" Yi Chun turned his head and looked at Xiaoxi. He didn't seem to be faking it. Then he looked at her small body and sneered. "Leave you here and let me escape? You should at least have some self-awareness. You're both heavenly demons. Look at his aura and then look at yours. Don't you feel ashamed? Forget it. Since you're eager to protect your master, I won't argue with you about that. Step back a little and let me see how strong this flood dragon is." And Xiaoxi immediately muttered unhappily, "I'm not that weak. Most importantly, it's not a battle-type treasure hunting platform. It's my specialty." Even so, and Xiaoxi still obediently retreated tens of thousands of meters away and looked over from afar. He was ready to help Yi Chun if he couldn't hold on. At this time, the flood dragon had already closed in. Yi Chun revealed a ferocious expression and said ferociously, "Damn human. How dare you steal my food while I was sleeping? Return all my food to me immediately, and I can give you a quick death. Otherwise, I'll make you beg for death." Yi Chun flipped his wrist, and the Godslayer appeared in his hand. He pointed forward and said to the flood dragon, "You're a heavenly demon after all. Why do you talk so much nonsense? I did take the green hell spiritual fruit. If you want it back, come and get it yourself. If you defeat me, it'll be yours." Then Yi Chun made the first move. He directly pierced the flood dragon's head with his spear. Suddenly, there was a shrill, whistling sound. It seemed that even the air had exploded at that moment. A terrifying energy was emitted from the soul-devouring spear. It seemed to be able to directly destroy the primordial spirit. The sharp energy made the flood dragon's heart sink. "Damn it! Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish." The flood dragon seemed to be angry out of humiliation. It roared crazily, and the chi and blood in its body suddenly rose for thousands of feet. The flood dragon's body suddenly rushed over like a real abyss demon dragon. He held the huge golden hammer in his hand and seemed to want to sweep everything away. Behind him, the flood dragon's body also appeared and rushed towards Yi Chun. A cold light flashed in Yi Chun's eyes. The flood dragon was indeed a veteran heavenly demon. However, Yi Chun also had a lot of trump cards. The Godslayer in his hand was extremely sharp. He also had good things like the cauldron of heaven and earth in his body. Naturally, he was not afraid. The moment the Godslayer pierced out, the Samsara sword was also unsheathed. A sharp sword chi pierced the sky. In an instant, countless huge wind blades appeared out of thin air and slashed towards the flood dragon with an incomparably fierce aura. After a loud rumble, the golden hammer in the flood dragon's hand collided with the god-killing spear in Yi Chun's hand. Instantly, a terrifying shock wave began to spread in all directions. Even the forest within a radius of several hundred feet below was blown to smithereens. The air kept twisting, and that terrifying aura seemed to be able to burn everything. When the two sides clashed, Yi Chun retreated several hundred meters. The flood dragon's energy was indeed very terrifying. In terms of energy storage, Yi Chun was not as good as the flood dragon, but the flood dragon could not hurt him at all. Aware of this, Yi Chun looked up to the sky and laughed. Then he rushed towards the flood dragon again. Chapter 1359. This battle turned the sky and earth upside down, and the sun and moon lost their light. This was also Yi Chun's most hardy battle since he came to the untainted world. He used all his means and all his trump cards. He bombarded the man in front of him indiscriminately. This was also the most powerful opponent Yi Chun had ever encountered. This old dragon was not just a sky demon. It seemed to have reached the late stage of the sky demon and was quite difficult to deal with. Yi Chen's methods could not do anything to him. In the end, he only made the old dragon spit out a few mouthfuls of golden blood. However, this was a piece of cake for the old dragon. On the other hand, the old Jiao dragon felt like a dog biting a porcupine. Yi Chen had too many trump cards. Although the old Jiao dragon's magical power was profound, it couldn't do anything to Yi Chen. The old dragon was so angry that he screamed and his eyes turned red. He shook his head and wagged his tail, stirring up the wind and clouds. Yi Chen was not at a disadvantage at all. They were evenly matched. Yi Chen was even stronger than the old flood dragon. His endurance was much greater than the old flood dragon's. As Yi Chen had countless trump cards, he could last a month in a battle of this level without any problems. However, the old dragon could not. After 14 hours, the old dragon was panting and could not hold on any longer. His eyes were already drifting, and he wanted to escape. Yi Chen did not forget to provoke him. "What's wrong? Old thing, don't you want your green underworld spiritual fruit back? Or you can't hold on anymore after such a short time? Are you still a man? The most important thing for a man is to be strong." The old dragon was so angry that he roared, "Despicable and shameless little bastard! Do you dare to fight with me without any equipment?" Yi Chen sneered and said mockingly, "Old thing, did you get kicked in the head by a donkey? Or do you have dementia? Why should I give up the advantage of my hands and fight with an old worm like you? Little brat, I've memorized your aura. This king will not rest until you die." After saying this, the old dragon head turned around without looking back. He turned into a gust of wind and returned to the cold pond, never to come out again. He needed time to recover from today's exhaustion. The old flood dragon was about to explode from anger. Not only was the azure underworld spiritual fruit stolen, he couldn't do anything to the other party. And Xiaoxi, who was watching the battle from afar, was dumbfounded. She had never expected such an outcome. She knew that Yi Chen was very powerful and seemed to have a lot of trump cards, but she never expected him to be so powerful. Even the old flood dragon at the heaven demon level was not his match. After being beaten away by him, it seemed that it was not a shameful thing for her to acknowledge him as her master. After chasing away the old flood dragon, Yi Chen was also in high spirits. In the battle just now, some of the things that he didn't understand before suddenly became clear. This old flood dragon was clearly an excellent punching bag for him to practice with. How could he let him go so easily? Therefore, Yi Chen followed the old flood dragon to the air above the cold pond and laughed loudly. "Old thing, stinky worm, why are you a coward? Didn't you want to fight 300 rounds with me? Get the hell out here." Yi Chen's voice rumbled in all directions. Even the surface of the cold pond was surging with monstrous waves. The cold pond water was incomparably heavy. When the waves hit the water surface, it made a sound like muffled thunder. This made the old flood dragon, hiding in the cold pond, very angry. He roared from under the water, "Little brat, if you want to die so badly, I'll fulfill your wish. If you have the guts, come down and see if this grandpa will swallow you in one gulp." Although Yi Chen was full of confidence, he wasn't arrogant at all. He knew that he had the advantage outside, so how could he be willing to go down to the flood dragon's home ground? He laughed and said, "I've already tasted the water. It's not fun at all. I won't go down. If you have the guts, come up. If you have the guts, come down." The old flood dragon was determined to be shameless. In any case, he knew that even if he went out, he couldn't do anything to Yi Chen. He might as well hide under the water and wait for an opportunity in the future. At this time, Yi Chen received the information from the craftsman in the small world. He immediately understood that the cold pond water had a magical effect on refining weapons. Therefore, Yi Chen laughed and said, "Old worm, since you don't dare to come out, I'll drain the water from your pond. Let's see how long you can hide." After that, Yi Chen directly stretched out his hand. His right hand was like a whale drinking water. Countless amounts of cold pond water were sucked into his small world. The violent flow of water stirred up quite a big storm in the small world. The lake that Yi Chen previously opened couldn't hold it anymore, so he had to expand it again. At this time, the lake had expanded to a length and width of several hundred miles. It could hold hundreds of millions of tons of water. Countless amounts of cold pond water were sucked into the small world by Yi Chun, just like that. Although this cold pond was very large, it couldn't withstand Yi Chun's crazy plundering. In just 4 hours, the water level of the cold pond had dropped by more than 10 feet. If this continued, there was a possibility that Yi Chun would suck it all up. The old flood dragon, hiding under the cold pond, panicked. He kept cursing in his heart. He didn't expect to provoke a sticky candy while he was quietly cultivating. Was he really going to let him suck all the water in the cold pond? This was the place where he lived. It was difficult to find such a comfortable place in the entire untainted world. Even if there was one, it would be occupied by the terrifying demon clan. He didn't dare to snatch it from others. Just as the old flood dragon gnashed his teeth and was about to rush out to fight Yi Chun stopped. It was because the lake in the small world was also full. Billions of tons of cold pond water was enough for these craftsmen to use and reproduce with the dark spiritual fruits. Therefore, Yi Chun snorted unwillingly. Fine, I'll let you go first. If I'm not happy in the future, I'll come back to deal with you. After that, Yi Chun rose into the sky and left without looking back. The old flood dragon, hiding under the cold pond, heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, he was a little angry. What did this bastard mean before he left? If he's not happy, he'll come and deal with me. Did I become his punching bag? How preposterous! Chapter 1360. After Yi Chun reunited with Xiaoxi, and Xiaoxi blinked her big black eyes and said with admiration, "Master, you are so powerful. You can actually challenge those at a higher level. That old flood dragon was already very powerful when my father was still alive, but it couldn't do anything to you." Yi Chun was in a good mood now, so he didn't care about Xiaoxi's little thoughts. He stroked Xiaoxi's fluffy head as if he was petting a puppy, messing up her hair. Yi Chun said with a smile, "Not bad. I'm very satisfied with the harvest this time. Let's find a place to rest first. I want to see how effective these green hell spiritual fruits are." Then Yi Chun took Xiaoxi across the void and came to a cave residence with great scenery. He ordered Xiaoxi to be on guard outside for him, and then took out 10 green hell spiritual fruits from the small world. These green hell spiritual fruits emitted a dazzling fragrance. Yi Chun swallowed them all without hesitation. Then he felt a hot current exploding in his body, constantly transforming his body. His limbs and bones were warm and very comfortable. Yi Chun exhaled slightly and opened his eyes. At this time, the system prompt sounded in his ears. "Congratulations to player for eating green hell spiritual fruits. Your innate bone structure has increased by 1,000 points. Congratulations to player for eating green hell spiritual fruits. Your innate bone structure has increased by 1,000 points. Congratulations to player." The system prompt sounded 10 times, and Yi Chun's innate bone structure had increased by 10,000 points. When Yi Chun opened his eyes, a trace of passion flashed in his eyes. Sure enough, it was a good thing. Although the increase of 10,000 innate root points was not worth mentioning to him, it was very important to the generals of the 3 kingdoms under his command. As long as he had the support of an endless supply of green hell spiritual fruits, he was confident that he could raise all his subordinates to the level of sage-to-be. Now he had the green hell spiritual fruits and the cold pond water for them to recuperate, but he didn't know how long they would grow. But with the ratio of 10,000 between the small world and the outside world, Yi Chun was confident that he could afford to wait. By the time Yi Chun stood up and walked to the door, he saw Xiaoxi staring at her with wide eyes. Her white and tender fingers were in her red and moist mouth. A trace of sparkling and translucent saliva dripped down along with her fingers. And Xiaoxi said pitifully, "Master, is the azure underworld spiritual fruit tasty? What is its taste?" Yi Chun was stunned for a moment, and then he couldn't help laughing. And Xiaoxi was a heaven demon, but since she was born, she had never left her cave residence and had no contact with the outside world. She was probably still a child in her race, which was equivalent to a human child, so it was normal for her to be greedy. Moreover, Yichen couldn't do something like wanting a horse to run fast without giving it grass to eat. Thus, he flipped his palm and took out 3 juicy dark spirit fruits. He handed them over and said, "If you want to know what it tastes like, why don't you try it yourself?" "Thank you, master. You are so kind." And Xiaoxi was stunned for a moment, and then she was incomparably happy. Obviously, she didn't expect Yichen to be so generous. After all, they had signed a master-servant contract. Even if Yichen didn't give her a single fruit, she couldn't do anything about it. And Xiaoxi quickly grabbed the 3 dark spirit fruits and took a big bite. She immediately narrowed her eyes in pleasure and couldn't help but exclaim, "Oh my God, it's so delicious. It's sour, sweet, and crispy. If I knew there were such delicious things outside, I would have come out from the cave abode a long time ago." Then, Xiaoxi finished all 3 green hell spiritual fruits in a few mouthfuls. She stuck out her pink tongue and licked her rosy lips. She looked at Yichen eagerly and said weakly, "Master, I want more." Yichen shook his head speechlessly and handed 3 more fruits to Xiaoxi. "Kacha! Kacha! Master, I want more." Yichen looked at Xiaoxi and thought for a moment. He said, "I have never been harsh on my subordinates. Although you have signed a master-servant contract with me, I won't treat you badly. As long as you work hard for me in the future, you can have these green hell spiritual fruits every day. I'll give you 3 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon. If you find something that I'm satisfied with, I'll give you 2 extra fruits. How about that?" And Xiaoxi narrowed her eyes and thought for a moment. She would be so happy to have such fruits every day. So she nodded and said with a smile, "Deal?" "Thank you, master." Yichen nodded and said to Xiaoxi, "Now, try to sense if there are any heaven and earth treasures nearby. Remember, I'm never picky. Like the big radish you ate last time, I'll take as many as you can find." And Xiaoxi's eyes lit up. Of course, she knew that Yichen was referring to the Millennium Ginseng. Perhaps the Millennium Ginseng was extremely rare in the 3 Kingdoms world, but it was not a big deal in the untainted world. At this time, the human tribe had not been born yet. The demon tribe did not like this kind of thing. Only the demon tribe, such as the demon rabbit tribe, were interested in it. Next, the heavenly materials and earthly treasures in the untainted world suffered. Under the leadership of Xiaoxi, the 1,000-year-old ginseng, the 1,000-year-old Rehmannia, the 1,000-year-old Bell spiritual milk, and the 10,000-year-old Ganoderma were all swept away. For the past few days, Yichen had been grinning from ear to ear. This was a great harvest. The people he arranged for in the small world were also very busy. Countless treasures of heaven and earth had been falling from the sky recently, landing on the hills and spiritual fields in the worldlet. They were a little numb. In the outside world, these were the most valuable treasures, but in the worldlet, they were like weeds on the side of the road. Moreover, the ratio of the worldlet to the outside world was very different. It would not be long before these ginseng and other heaven and earth treasures became super treasures that were 10,000 or even 100,000 years old. In the next few days, Yichen suddenly found that Xiaoxi became a little absent-minded. She was not looking for treasures enthusiastically. Even the green underworld spiritual fruit did not seem to attract her interest. She always looked in one direction in a daze, as if there was something that she could not say. There were several times when Xiaoxi looked at Yichen, opened her mouth, and then closed it again. Yichen directly sat down with Xiaoxi. He looked into her eyes and said, "You have been with me for some time. I think you already know what kind of person I am. I noticed that you were absent-minded these days. If you have something to say, you can tell me. As long as it is not too excessive or against my principles, I will usually satisfy you." Chapter 1361. And Xiaoxi was a bit hesitant at first, but when she saw Yichen's sincere eyes, her lips trembled and her eyes turned red. Tears fell like pearls. She cried and said, "Master, I suddenly remembered what my father said to me before he left. I know what he is looking for." Yichen's heart skipped a beat. He asked, What did you remember? Do you know where your father is? And Xiaoxi nodded. She turned around and looked to the west. She said, tens of millions of miles away in the far west, there's a foggy swamp. Legend has it that in the depths of the foggy swamp, there is a psychic stone. This psychic stone can increase the reproductive ability of the treasure-hunting psychic birds. Treasure-hunting psychic birds are too rare. My father said that there are less than 100 of them in the entire world. Therefore, the psychic stone is very important to us treasure-hunting psychic birds. My father went to the foggy swamp. Foggy swamp? Yichen immediately frowned. Foggy swamp was a famous name. How could he not know that in the far west, there was a boundless swamp shrouded in gray fog all year round? No one knew what was in the swamp. The fog did not disperse for many years. Even if the experts of the cultivation world used great magic, their divine sense could not penetrate more than 1,000 feet away from the foggy swamp. It seemed that once a cultivator entered the foggy swamp, their divine sense would be useless. In other words, these omnipotent cultivators would become deaf and blind as soon as they entered the foggy swamp. This made people very uncomfortable. Moreover, the fog swamp was filled with danger. Disregarding everything else, the gray fog was highly toxic and could continuously weaken one's body. As long as the heaven and earthling chi in a cultivator's body reached a certain depth, the cultivator would become no different from an ordinary person. Breathing in the fog would also lead to death. In his previous life, almost all cultivators entered the foggy swamp. In fact, there were a total of 10 forbidden areas in the untainted world. The foggy swamp was the last one. Many of them didn't believe in heresy. They formed teams and connected each other with ropes. They wanted to explore the foggy swamp, but the deepest they went was only 12 miles. Even so, they still suffered heavy casualties. From then on, no one dared to have any ideas about the foggy swamp. Yichen glanced at Xiaoxi. If her father ended up entering the misty swamp, then things would be troublesome. Although Yichen sympathized with Xiaoxi, he couldn't put himself in such a dangerous situation for Xiaoxi. And Xiaoxi obviously knew how dangerous the misty swamp was. Yichen would never risk his life for a pet. Hence, she closed her eyes in despair as tears rolled down her cheeks. Psychic Divine Stone? Psychic Divine Stone? Yichen silently muttered a few times in his heart. Suddenly, he frowned as he recalled something. Could the Psychic Divine Stone that Xiaoxi had mentioned be that thing in the legends? If that was true, then it would be too much of a coincidence. Yichen wasn't sure if the Psychic Divine Stone was the heaven-defying treasure that he had heard of in his previous life. He was still worried, so he asked Xiaoxi about the characteristics of the Psychic Divine Stone. Through Xiaoxi's explanation, Yichen became more and more certain that the Psychic Divine Stone was the heaven-defying treasure that he had heard of. Increasing the reproduction rate of the psychic bird race was only a small side effect. The main function of the Psychic Divine Stone was not that. Yichen trembled with excitement when he thought of the heaven-defying properties of the Psychic Divine Stone. Then, Yichen took a deep breath and pretended to be calm as he said, "All right, get up first. Isn't it just the foggy swamp? I'll go with you. Your father is still alive. We will definitely bring him out." "What, master? Is what you said true?" And Xiaoxi raised her head in disbelief. Her beautiful eyes stared at Yichen without blinking. It was as if she wanted to imprint his appearance deeply into her heart. She was extremely touched. It was impossible that Yichen didn't know about the dangers of the swamp. Even so, he was still willing to take the risk with her. Such a master was simply one of a kind in the world. Yichen purposely put on a straight face and said, "My words are of the utmost importance. How can they be taken lightly? However, before we enter the foggy swamp, we still have to be fully prepared. At the very least, we have to neutralize the poisonous gas in the foggy swamp." And Xiaoxi immediately nodded her head like a chick pecking at rice. Right now, she would do whatever Yichen said. She obeyed him completely and unconditionally. Even if Yichen didn't give her a single dark spirit fruit, and Xiaoxi would be willing to risk her life for Yichen. Then, Yichen and Xiaoxi set off towards the far west. In truth, Yichen also had an uneasy, adventurous heart. He also wanted to know what good things were in the foggy swamp, which no one else had set foot in before. 7 days later, Yi Chun and Xiaoxi appeared at the edge of the foggy swamp. Looking at the boundless swamp that was shrouded in fog, both of their hearts sank at the same time. The foggy swamp was like a terrifying beast crouching in the darkness with its mouth wide open, ready to devour anyone at any time. Yichen took a deep breath. Then, with a flash of his body, he circled around the edge of the foggy swamp and returned. There was an emerald glass bottle in his hand. Inside the bottle was some of the fog from the foggy swamp. Yichen filled more than 10 bottles of this kind of bottle and sent them all into the small world. He let the alchemists study them together and quickly come up with the corresponding antidote. 3 stinkers were better than 1 zhuge. The original 10 alchemists and the apprentices they trained now numbered as many as 3,000 alchemists in the small world. Their level was not inferior to his masters back then. With 3,000 experienced alchemists studying together, Yi Chun believed that there would be a result soon. While waiting, Yi Chun relied on the many trump cards he had and probed his way into the misty swamp to gain a better understanding of the situation. Yi Chun could be considered a bold person. When he entered the foggy swamp, he found that his powerful divine sense, which could cover hundreds of thousands of miles, was useless here. At most, it could cover an area of 10 miles. This change made Yi Chun quite uncomfortable. The periphery of the foggy swamp was dead silent. Under the cover of Yi Chun's divine sense, there were no creatures. However, Yi Chun knew that there must be other creatures in the foggy swamp. Otherwise, it would not be one of the top 10 forbidden areas. This kind of probing stopped after entering 100 miles. This was because the gray fog was constantly eroding Yi Chun's protective spirit qi. It felt like a fish out of water. It was quite uncomfortable. Chapter 1362. Yi Chun didn't act carelessly and immediately withdrew. He quietly waited for the alchemists to give him a reply. After waiting for about 3 days, there was finally a result. The alchemists had refined the corresponding antidote according to the characteristics of the gray fog. As long as one took this antidote, the gray fog could be isolated from a body. The effect of each pill could be maintained for 12 hours. And Xiaoxi was also very surprised by all this, but she was very smart and didn't ask anything. She was now convinced by Yi Chun. This powerful and mysterious master had many unknown secrets. This was good. As the stronger Yi Chun was, the greater the possibility of saving her father. There was nothing to hesitate about. Yi Chun took in Xiaoxi and carefully entered the foggy swamp. Their huge spiritual sense couldn't work, so they couldn't move forward quickly. They could only slowly explore forward like ordinary cultivators. On the first day, the two of them only managed to advance through 300 kilometers. Although it was not particularly slow, it was much slower compared to Yi Chun's ability to traverse through hundreds of thousands of li in the blink of an eye. Yi Chun wasn't in a hurry. In any case, saving people didn't matter much. He also took this time to slowly explore the secrets of the foggy swamp. However, they were still at the edge of the foggy swamp. They didn't find anything. They didn't find any suspicious creatures, nor did they find any heavenly treasures. Yi Chun didn't know how big the periphery of the foggy swamp was, so he could only explore slowly. After 10 days, they had already moved 3,000 to 4,000 kilometers and finally broke through the periphery of the foggy swamp. The reason why he was so sure was because this place had become a little different. It was no longer as lifeless as the outside, but the gray fog here had become thicker. The range of Yi Chun's spiritual sense had also increased from 10 kilometers to 1 kilometer. Just like before, they still didn't find any traces of creatures here. And Xiaoxi and Yi Chun had similar experiences. Her powerful treasure hunting ability was also limited here. She could only perceive heavenly treasures within 1 kilometer. So far, she hadn't found anything. However, the two of them found some rare minerals here one after another. Unlike the black iron ores found in Yi Chun's territory, they found some very rare forging equipment here. Some rare minerals were indispensable. Unfortunately, Yi Chen's time was limited. He didn't have the time to stay here and excavate these minerals. It was even more inconvenient for his subordinates to appear here. After all, the gray fog was extremely poisonous. Only by relying on the antidote could they stay here for a short period of time. Yi Chen secretly marked these places. He planned to excavate them on the way back. Next up, Yi Chen and Xiaoxi continued to venture deeper. As the two of them ventured deeper, they discovered more and more rare ores. Moreover, these ores were very large. Some of them were even exposed to the surface. Yi Chen and Xiaoxi even found an immortal stone vein. Although they were all low-grade immortal stones, they were rich in storage. According to Yi Chen's estimation, this immortal stone vein could be mined at least 200 million low-grade immortal stones. Yi Chen shook his head. He didn't want to miss out on such a large immortal stone vein. They immediately stopped here. After spending 3 days and a lot of Yi Chen's energy, they finally finished mining this immortal stone vein. They obtained 250 million low-grade immortal stones. Satisfied, Yi Chen and Xiaoxi continued forward. However, Yi Chen's speed was much slower. He only moved about 100 kilometers a day, and Xiaoxi looked around in fear. She carefully pulled Yi Chen's sleeve and said in a low voice, "Master, I keep feeling that there's a pair of eyes staring at us in the dark. It's so scary." Yi Chen didn't even raise his head. He just waved his hand slightly and said in a low voice, "After I finished mining that low-grade immortal stone vein, I found that we were targeted by something. However, it wasn't just one, but dozens or even hundreds of them. They are hiding in the dark. I don't know what they are, but they don't come with good intentions. Moreover, their numbers are increasing. I'm afraid they will attack soon." And Xiaoxi immediately leaned close to Yi Chen in fear. She asked in a daze, "Really? Don't scare me. What should we do?" Yi Chen played with the Godslayer in his hand and sneered. "What should we do? We'll deal with it as it comes. What else can we do?" A group of guys hiding their heads, but showing their tails. The reason why they didn't immediately rush over is that they don't have the confidence to deal with me. Don't forget that in this foggy swamp, only my divine sense is weakened. My strength is not weakened by much. Hearing Yi Chen's words, and Xiaoxi finally felt relieved. She didn't forget that although Yi Chen was still a golden immortal, he had endless means. Even the old flood dragon was no match for him. He was not someone a rookie like her could compare with. Yi Chen didn't let his guard down. His divine sense was suppressed to the point that he could only detect movements within a radius of 1 mile. He didn't know what was following him, but since the other party could follow him from a distance without him noticing, didn't it mean that the other party had a way to follow him? They weren't from the demon clan. Yi Chen's intuition told him that these things didn't belong to the demon clan. They seemed to be primitive creatures in this foggy swamp. Yi Chen's curiosity was piqued. What were the primitive creatures in this foggy swamp? No one had seen them in his previous life. However, this time, they definitely wouldn't be able to escape from Yi Chen's hands. At this moment, Yi Chen suddenly stabbed the Godslayer in his hand behind him without hesitation. There was a clank, and the sound of metal clashing could be heard. There was still nothing in the void. However, there were a few drops of black blood on the surface of the void. Then, with the help of the fire spirit pearl, Yi Chen suddenly spat out a mouthful of raging fire. In an instant, Yi Chen and Xiaoxi were surrounded by raging flames. The flames of the fire spirit pearl were so ferocious that it seemed to burn the gray fog. In an instant, the raging flames lit up the space within a radius of a few hundred feet. The creatures that were hiding in the dark were caught off guard. They couldn't hold themselves back any longer and revealed themselves one after another. When she saw the appearance of these creatures, and Xiaoxi suddenly gasped, she nervously pulled on Yi Chen's sleeve. Chapter 1363. Yi Chen's gaze turned cold as well. He saw that he had already been surrounded by tens of strange black mantises that were over 6 meters long. Their bodies were completely black and shone with a metallic light. The ghostly aura stared deeply at them. Yichen was a little puzzled. He was sure that he was not mistaken. The aura of these huge, monstrous mantises was clearly ghostly. This made him feel a little surprised. Yichen had seen many of the demon race in the chaos world, but this was the first time he had seen something like this. Yichen's expression became more and more unsightly. If it were a newbie, they might not be able to sense the problem. However, Yichen had lived another life. He immediately knew that these terrifying creatures were called nether mantises. No one knew where these nether mantises came from. They often appeared in some mines. These nether mantises seemed to especially like to devour mineral resources, especially immortal stones. These nether mantises were very difficult to deal with. They were also very cunning. Once they realized that something was wrong, they would immediately escape. What made people even more speechless was that these nether mantises could turn invisible. In other words, these nether mantises were natural assassins. Countless players had died at the hands of these nether mantises. In his previous life, Yichen did not seem to have heard of any players successfully killing them. However, there were about 30 nether mantises around him now. Their red compound eyes were flashing with a cruel, cold light as they closed in on him step by step. Just a moment ago, Yichen had relied on his extremely sharp senses to stab out with his spear, injuring one of the nether mantises. Immediately after, Yichen did not hesitate to activate his super mystique, the fiery eyes of truth. It emitted a bright light that completely enveloped the surroundings. Under the cover of the fiery eyes of truth, these nether mantises' invisibility ability was useless in front of Yichen. An unknown enemy was the most terrifying. Since they had already revealed themselves, there was naturally nothing to be afraid of. Yichen let out a long roar and stabbed out with the Godslayer in his hand without hesitation. A bright and powerful sword aura pierced through the space of tens of meters and arrived in front of one of the nether mantises in an instant. Screech! The sound of metal clashing could be heard as sparks flew in all directions. A 2-foot-long wound was left on the nether mantis body. Black blood was gushing out continuously. The nether mantis let out a roar and pounced forward without any regard for its life. The two forelimbs that were like large guillotines were already slashing towards Yichen like the scythe of the Grim Reaper. The Godslayer in Yichen's hands was a priceless treasure. It was enough to pierce through the body of an ordinary demon immortal. But now a solid shot could only leave a wound on these nether mantises' bodies. Their body structure was really too sturdy. Yichen couldn't help but narrow his eyes. These nether mantises were too strange. There was no way to determine their true cultivation level just by looking at the degree of ghost chi emitted from their bodies, but their bodies were tough enough. Haha, who's afraid of who? It's only a battle. Yichen let out a long roar. He swung the Godslayer in his hands and immediately rushed up to fight with these nether mantises. At this time, Yichen didn't pay much attention to the moves. He swung the Godslayer in his hands, making a shrill whistling sound in the air. He was completely using it as a staff. In the whistling sound of the wind, he crazily whipped the bodies of these nether mantises with incomparably strong defense. In just a breath's time, Yichen swung out more than 30,000 attacks, bombarding the bodies of the nether mantises like a storm. The nether mantis closest to Yichen was almost going crazy from the attacks. Even its tough body couldn't withstand Yichen's attacks. With a bang, this 2-foot-long nether mantis in front of him was directly blown up by Yichen. Then, the fragments of the nether mantis body shot out in all directions. Yichen's sharp eyes noticed that after the nether mantis was blown up, there was a ball of black light left behind. He quickly stored it in his storage space. However, this was not the time to check on it, because the remaining nether mantises were roaring in an unintelligible manner. They were already rushing over from all directions. Yichen laughed and swung the Godslayer in his hands. He assumed a fighting posture and entered a never-before-seen frenzied attack. At this time, Xiaoxi was floating in the air, her face full of anxiety. She didn't stay idle and took the initiative to attack and provoke a nether mantis. Now, She was having a hard time dealing with it. Although Xiaoxi was a heavenly demon, her attack methods were really lacking. The damage Xiaoxi caused to the nether mantis was not worth mentioning. It was like scratching an itch for the opponent. Yi Chun, on the other hand, was different. Due to his previous experience, Yi Chun was now brandishing the god-slaying spear in his hand like a windmill. Under the high frequency of his attacks, none of the nether mantises could withstand his continuous attacks. These nether mantises couldn't escape from Yi Chun's attacks. They were all dizzy. About an hour later, these 30-odd nether mantises were all wiped out by Yi Chun. They also left behind dozens of shining watermelon-sized items. After collecting all these items and studying them carefully, he was shocked. These were actually red copper essence and black iron essence. Suddenly, Yi Chun grinned. This kind of material wasn't an ordinary material. It was really hard to come by. For example, for ordinary red copper ore and black iron ore, 1 million caddies of red copper ore or black iron ore would require 10,000 blacksmiths to work day and night for 3 months to forge a fist-sized piece of red copper ore or black iron ore. A piece the size of a human head would require 10,000 blacksmiths to forge day and night for a year. Now, there are more than 30 such materials floating in front of Yi Chun. Yi Chun also found a truth that was closer to the truth through his analysis. These nether mantises that came from nowhere usually ate the ores that were everywhere in the depths of the misty swamp. After the nether mantises devoured the ores, these head-sized pieces of red copper essence and black iron essence would form in their bodies. Now, they had all benefited Yi Chun. The reason why Yi Chun attached so much importance to them was that these materials were essential for forging immortal artifacts. The reason why the forging of immortal artifacts took so long and was only equipped with fierce generals was because the materials were too troublesome and took too much time. Chapter 1364. The reason why these nether mantises followed Yi Chun was because Yi Chun had previously dug out a huge immortal stone mine. This was equivalent to snatching food from a tiger's mouth. Although these nether mantises instinctively felt that Yi Chun had an aura that terrified them, they still insisted on attacking in the dark. However, they didn't expect Yi Chun to react so quickly and leave them with nowhere to hide. Thus, they were all killed in a rather aggrieved manner. At this moment, Xiaoxi finally dared to descend from the sky. She looked at the broken bodies of the nether mantises with some lingering fear. She carefully stood beside Yi Chun and asked, "Master, what are these darn things? They are too terrifying." Yi Chun used the God Slayer to fiddle with the broken bodies of these nether mantises and analyze their structure. He nodded and said, "These things are called nether mantises. As for where they came from, I have no idea. Look at their body structure. It is completely different from the demon race. They have no meridians, no flesh, and are completely made of this crystal structure. I just don't know how many nether mantises there are in the foggy swamp." Yi Chun collected all these materials and then continued to lead Xiaoxi forward. At the same time, his fiery eyes of truth were constantly paying attention to their surroundings. Yi Chun discovered traces of nether mantises in front of them again. This time, it was Yi Chun who took the initiative to attack. With the previous experience, Yi Chun attacked these nether mantises at a high frequency. His speed of killing the nether mantises also became faster and faster. However, Yi Chun still frowned. The deeper he went into the misty swamp, the denser the hell mantises became. Moreover, they were also more powerful. At first, the hell mantises he encountered were about 2 zhang long. But now, Yi Chun had already encountered hell mantises that were about 5 zhang long. The strength of the nether mantises was proportional to their size. The larger their size, the more powerful they were. Yi Chun was already having a hard time dealing with these nether mantises. Of course, the harvest was also great. Every time a hell mantis was killed, it would leave behind a pile of precious materials. The materials left behind by these hell mantises that were more than 15 meters long were equivalent to the size of 2 human heads. At this moment, Yi Chun had already harvested hundreds of such materials. He had already sent all of them into his miniature world. Those craftsmen told him that these materials were enough to forge dozens of immortal equipment. This gave Yi Chun a huge motivation. Moreover, he now knew that these nether mantises were treasures from head to toe, especially that pair of huge scythes. The degree of hardness was at the level of a middle-grade spirit tool. As long as it was sent into the pocket world, some craftsmen would reforge it, and it would become a sharp weapon. This made him feel that it was a pity to waste those materials previously. However, there were still many more of these mantises. The deeper they went into the foggy swamp, the more rare minerals they encountered. There were several times when Yi Chun could not resist the temptation and stopped mining. Unknowingly, Yi Chun and Xiaoxi had already gone deep into the foggy swamp. In a month, Yi Chun had also excavated dozens of huge immortal stone veins, harvesting more than 1 billion middle-grade immortal stones and nearly 10 billion low-grade immortal stones. This made Yi Chun a little numb. The immortal stones that people fought over in the outside world had become no different from the stones on the roadside in his eyes. They were just numbers. During this month, Yi Chun kept fighting with those nether mantises. His strength was also maturing day by day in the process of continuous tempering. Moreover, Yi Chun also felt that his cultivation was constantly rising after refining these supreme-grade immortal stones. He had already reached the peak of the gold immortal realm. It would not be long before he could break through to the level of Daluo Jinxian. "Master, I'm really too tired. Can I rest for a while?" And Xiaoxi straightened her back. She was now unrecognizable. She was wearing a black armor and holding a huge mining hoe in her hand. During the journey, she could not participate in Yi Chun's battle. However, Yi Chun did not let her stay idle. After all, she was a heavenly demon. It was very efficient to use her to mine. Therefore, Xiaoxi sadly became a glorious miner. Don't think that I'm just asking you to mine. In fact, when you broke through to the heaven realm and had to go through the thunder tribulation, I helped you block all the thunder tribulation. Your heaven realm cultivation is only in name. Now is the time for you to continuously strengthen your foundation. I'm doing this for your own good. Yi Chun did not even raise his head. He did not forget to throw 2 green nether spiritual fruits to comfort her sensitive heart. And Xiaoxi immediately felt a little ashamed. She also knew that she was a burden to Yi Chun. She was a heavenly demon in name, but not in reality. She could not even deal with a nether mantis. However, Xiaoxi also felt that mining could train people. He had already dug up 3 immortal stone veins. Now, he already felt that his strength had improved by leaps and bounds. He was no longer as light as before, without any strength at all. As such, Xiaoxi did not say anything else. She accepted the azure nether spirit fruits that Yi Chun handed over and continued to mine without any complaints. Yi Chun, who was checking his harvest, suddenly stabbed the Godslayer in his hand without warning. After a mournful cry, the head of a nether mantis more than 80 feet long was directly pierced through by Yi Chun's spear. The nether mantis fell to the ground with a bang, bursting out a black light ball the size of a basin. Yi Chun immediately put away the spoils without hesitation. He also removed the nether mantis's 2 machetes, which were more than 10 feet long, and threw them into the worldlet. At this time, there were more than 5,000 such giant machetes in the worldlet. Yi Chun wondered if he should let the Samsara dynasty establish a special machete team when he went back next time. Yi Chun made a fortune in the misty swamp. However, the outside world had doubts because Yi Chun had been flooding the world channel with messages about the little prince. Now that Yi Chun had not made any moves for more than a month, these players were not used to it. They discussed among themselves. Have you noticed that Guru Yi Chun has not made any moves for a month? What happened? The chaos world is extremely dangerous. No matter how powerful he is, he's just a player. Maybe he's already been eaten by those bloodthirsty monsters in the chaos world. Yes. What's the saying again? Watch him build a tall building. Watch him feast. Watch him collapse. There were also people who had different opinions. You people are so dark. Can't you see others doing well? At the very least, great God, ye brought his own country and ascended with the whole country. You guys are so capable. Why haven't you even reached ascension? That's right, that's right. I also feel that Grandmaster Yi is accumulating something. He'll amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. I believe that great God, ye won't fall so quickly. Chapter 1365. Yichen couldn't care less about what was being said in the World Channel. He was in a good mood as he continued to harvest the rare materials brought by the nether mantises. Now, Yichen's opponents had become giant nether mantises that were about 15 to 16 feet long. Yichen was already having a hard time dealing with such giant nether mantises. Even though he was very experienced now, the defense of these giant nether mantises was too strong. Yichen had tested his limit before, and it was that he could only face 30 giant nether mantises at the same time. Any more, and he wouldn't be able to handle it. Therefore, Yichen and Xiaoxi's progress was much slower. Of course, their harvest was huge. Every time they killed a giant nether mantis, they would obtain rare materials the size of a water tank. What was more shocking was that these giant nether mantises had a very strong stealth ability. If they weren't careful, they would be ambushed. Yichen didn't dare to be careless at the moment. He could only use his fiery golden eyes to observe his surroundings carefully. And Xiaoxi was completely at a loss in such an environment. She didn't dare to leave Yichen's side for even a moment. She was more worried about her father now. If her father entered the foggy swamp without the help of someone as strong as Yichen, how could he reach the deepest part of the swamp? Would he be killed by these nether mantises along the way? This was what Xiaoxi was most worried about. When Yichen and Xiaoxi walked for another few hundred miles, the number of nether mantises in front of them suddenly increased. This wasn't the same as before. Instead, it increased by dozens of times. Almost every few hundred feet, there was a giant nether mantis patrolling around vigilantly. And Xiaoxi nervously pulled Yichen's sleeve and hid under a giant oar. She whispered in his ear, "Master, what's going on? Why are there so many nether mantises here? Could it be that we've already reached their lair?" Yichen nodded. "I'm afraid you're right. This seems to be the nest of the netherworld mantises." After speaking, Yichen squinted his eyes and observed the area in front of him. He tried his best not to let his pupils reflect light. With the fiery golden eyes, he could see very far. Yichen noticed that there was an incomparably huge cave 10 miles ahead, and in front of the cave, there were 8 super large nether mantises that were over 1,000 feet long standing guard. Yichen guessed that this should be the nest of the nether mantises. Out of curiosity, Yichen wanted to go and take a look. Yichen himself could also conceal himself. The corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. Let's compare whose invisibility technique is better. After making up his mind, Yichen arranged for Xiaoxi to stay in the small world, then went into battle with a light pack. After concealing his aura and hiding all traces, he used the invisibility technique and quietly moved towards the nest of the nether mantises. Along the way, Yichen was very careful not to make any sound. He was very clear that he had already entered the vicinity of the nest of the nether mantises. Once exposed, he would have to face endless attacks from the nether mantises. No matter how powerful he was, he would probably die. Fortunately, although these nether mantises were super ferocious and could conceal themselves, their anti-detection abilities were very ordinary. Yichen walked past them slowly and did not arouse their vigilance. This made Yichen feel a lot more at ease. However, when Yichen arrived in front of the huge cave entrance, the 8 super large nether mantises seemed to sense that something was wrong. Those red compound eyes kept scanning in Yichen's direction, as if they were scanning something. Yichen held his breath and did not move. After finding nothing suspicious for a long time, the 8 nether mantises turned their heads. Only then did Yichen carefully stick to the wall and slowly enter this incomparably huge cave. As soon as he entered, Yichen felt a very suffocating aura. This huge cave was inlaid with a kind of blood-red gemstone that emitted a red light. The entire cave presented a very horrifying color. Moreover, there was a scattered smell of blood in the air that was constantly spreading. Yichen did not think too much about it. Since he was already here, he might as well take things as they came. He wanted to see what exactly was in the nest of the nether mantises that was so heavily guarded. This cave was excavated at a later stage. This mountain was obviously a naturally formed, thousand-year-old black iron mine. These nether mantises had forcibly dug out such a huge cave in the belly of the mountain. It was more than 300 feet long and wide, and could accommodate more than a dozen carriages traveling side by side. Yichen also sucked in a breath of cold air. It seemed that these nether mantises had quite a bit of intelligence. However, although the outside was heavily guarded, the inside of this huge cave was rather quiet. Yichen had already advanced a few hundred feet along the cave, but he did not see a single nether mantis. Yichen vaguely felt that something was wrong. What was the situation? Why was there nothing in the cave that they were guarding? Not only did Yichen not let his guard down, but he became even more careful. He stuck to the wall and completely blended into the air. He was like a lifeless iron ore that had merged with the entire mountain as he slowly advanced without leaving a trace. Suddenly, just as he was moving forward, an extremely terrifying and heavy aura suddenly came from the front. It was so oppressive that Yichen felt like he could not breathe. Yichen's expression suddenly changed because this terrifying aura was even stronger than the old flood dragon's aura that he had encountered before. It seemed to be not below that of a heavenly demon. In the beginning, these nether mantises, including the huge pack of nether mantises in front of the cave, did not give Yichen such pressure. This was because these things were completely different from demonic beasts. They had different structures and cultivation methods. Yichen originally thought that it was impossible to distinguish the strong from the weak through perception and judgment of the demonic beasts, but now his theory was completely overturned. Danger! There was extreme danger ahead. Yichen instinctively wanted to turn around and leave, but he was not willing to give up. He was also an expert of the late stage of the Golden Immortal Realm who had fought all the way here. He did not even see the other party's face and just ran away like this. That was not Yichen's style. Yichen became even more careful. He moved forward almost inch by inch. After about 15 minutes, his eyes suddenly widened. He saw that in front of him, there was a huge hall with a radius of tens of thousands of feet. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.